everybody. Welcome on in to the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. We are live. Welcome into the Saturday stream. You know what I forgot to realize? Well, you know what I forgot? Like, I didn't realize this yesterday, chat. But this is day 30. Day 30 in a row of the Mike from PA stream. I didn't even notice. Like, I just did 30 days in a row and it wasn't even like a thing. Like, I didn't even notice. I was like, oh, I guess we had 30 days in a row. Wow. There's a story that we haven't been covering, but apparently there was a street battle in France between the far left and the far right. And the far right lost, and one of their quote unquote activists was killed. And Emmanuel Macron has sided with the fascists and is supporting a gigantic Nazi rally. And the centrists are going pretty hard to align themselves with the far right. Here's France's 24.
We're joined here on set by our politics editor, Mark Perelman, to look really, Mark, at the political ramifications of all this. You know, how can the far-left France Unbound party recover from this? Is there division within their own ranks about the handling of all of this?
For now, no divisions at all. The party is fully behind its leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, fighting back, saying we have nothing to do this. This is a political vendetta against us. People are taking advantage of this tragic death to try to tarnish us and say we're not only on the far left, but we're the violent far left, a far left that kills and not only argues and fights in parliament. So this is clearly a big problem, and they're fighting back. A few hours ago, we learned that there was a bomb alert at the party headquarters in Paris, and it was quickly ended. But one of the leading members of France Unbound, Manuel Bompard, saying this proves that this is also dangerous for us, that everyone saying that we're killers or we're associated with killers could also have consequences for us. So they're obviously trying to find ways to respond. The problem is for Jean-Luc Mélenchon that it's on the record that the party is associated with this group called the Young Guard, which is now under scrutiny, which was dissolved a few months ago by the Interior Ministry. Why? Because
whose members are suspects.
Exactly. Why? Because Jean-Luc Mélenchon went to a kind of like summer camp where they were meeting back in 2023 to salute them. And in 2024, there was a public meeting in Auxerre, in Burgundy, where he said on the stage that the Young Guard was allied with France Unbound. So there is a link, not only speculation by journalists or by political opponents, but admitted by the leader himself. Obviously, this doesn't mean that Jean-Luc Mélenchon is ordering people to go and fight and eventually kill people. But the fact that he is indeed associated with this Young Guard, the fact that he himself, the supreme leader of the France Unbound, said that Raphaël Arnaud would run for election and be elected, Raphaël Arnaud being one of the founders of the Young Guard, clearly puts the France Unbound in a very difficult position. They have to respond because they want to distance themselves from the death of Quentin.
And meanwhile, this far-left France Unbound have in the past, they have cooperated, they have a partnership with the mainstream socialists in France. It has at times looked very bumpy anyway. There have been calls from former socialist president François Hollande and others too, perhaps to completely break any relationship between the far left and the mainstream socialists over this. Are we likely to see more of that?
Well, obviously, there are.
So what we could see, obviously, there is a big effort to unite, kind of like, I would call it a sanitaire against the left. You can kind of see centrists in Europe starting to abandon, they're starting to fully embrace supporting far-right politics. Now, before we get into this, I think I should give you the context.
Truth or Fake means we're welcomed by the big board. Maya, yet again, great to see you, Maya. Here in France, the killing of Quentin Durant last week has heightened tensions ahead of next month's municipal elections. Online speculation.
Hold on. Before we get into the manhunt.
And joining me in the studio is French politics editor Mark Perriman. I imagine, Mark, the pressure on far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon is growing by the minute.
Absolutely. And you saw those images of Mélenchon really retorting to all the accusations, because obviously everyone, and not only on the far right, which is to be expected, but also you heard government ministers saying that clearly he had a responsibility, not a direct responsibility, but probably a moral responsibility. This is obviously something that's not accepted by the France Unbowed leader, all the MPs, the others, and especially the MP we saw who was the founder of this group, the Young Guard. The problem is that Raphaël Arnaud, this MP, his attaché in parliament, has been pointed as a potential participant in the fight. We'll have more details because the prosecutor is supposed to give a press conference at 4 p.m. Paris time today. But already there are allegations that he might have been involved, and he himself said that he would withdraw from his official functions during the investigation. And a few minutes ago, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Yael Braun-Pivet, said that he was barred from entering the National Assembly, not because he was guilty, but that this could create further tensions, because if he appears in the National Assembly, other MPs might not appreciate it, and this could be feisty. So clearly, there's a lot of tension on France Unbowed, because it has ties to this group, and we'll have to wait. But if they were indeed involved in this tragic killing, this would probably hurt the far left. Let's not forget that just a few days ago, France Unbowed was qualified as extreme left by the French authorities. They totally reject that allegation. The French president, in an interview yesterday, said yes, for himself, France Unbowed was on the far left, and he also accused them of being outside the Republican realm, especially because of alleged anti-Semitic tendencies and declarations.
And of course, the big question is, what impact is this going to have on municipal elections here in France next month?
Well, obviously, yes, we're entering the last stage before those elections. Those are first and foremost local elections. If they were national elections, it would probably have more of an impact. But obviously in Lyon, where this took place, this could have an impact, but this is going to hurt, obviously, France Unbowed, because they had decided to make those elections important one, because they had generally neglected the municipal election. They said, our fight is the presidential election, the legislative election. This is how we need to really impose ourselves. And the municipal election is about local issues. That's not so much what we care about. This year, they said they realized that they probably were wrong in not having a strong local implantation. And so they were betting on those local elections to really start gaining some traction from the bottom up. So this could indeed hurt them. Obviously, we'll have to wait what happens then. There'll be a few weeks, and maybe they'll be able to distance themselves from what happened just a few days ago in Lyon. But clearly, this is a stain on their reputation, and it could hurt their prospects.
So basically, this is 100% kind of a standard Horst Wessel type situation where the far right tries to talk shit. They get into a fight. They look for a confrontation. They lose the confrontation, and one of their pencil necks dies. And now they're like, oh my God, the mean far left. Oh, the far left is so mean. They're beating our asses. All you want to do is deport people and treat people poorly because of their race. We just support Nazism. Why are you beating us up? And the centrists are joining in. The centrists under Macron are joining in.
5 days after the deadly beating of Quentin Durand.
Let's just, let me get you some examples of some of the nice things Clinton says. Or said. He's dead now.
Investigation is picking up speed. Among the men arrested is Jacques-Élie Farveau, a parliamentary aide for Raphaël Arnault. The France Unbowed MP is a founding member of the far-left and self-proclaimed anti-fascist organisation La Jeune Garde, which was dissolved by the French government in June last year. This was a reaction from one party member earlier on Tuesday.
You will have a series of reactions from France Unbowed's MPs who will respond to everyone.
A former intern for Raphaël Arnault has also been arrested. After being cited by numerous witnesses and formally identified by police, suspects have been arrested in areas surrounding the city of Lyon where the assault took place. The severity of their charges is yet to be confirmed. The government has singled out France Unbowed and La Jeune Garde. The Lyon prosecutor, meanwhile, has declined to comment, after saying that it is investigating a voluntary homicide and aggravated assault.
He was part of a group called Collectif Nemesis. It was an organization founded after the Greek goddess of revenge. The organization believes that a connection between immigration and crimes. It believes that non-European immigrants, particularly Muslims, are more likely to commit violence toward women. It has been condemned as racist by mainstream feminist organizations. The organization first appeared on 23 November 2019 at Nouveaux Tots, All of Us Women demonstration in Paris, in which it carried placards saying 52% of rapists were in Ile-de-France were foreign, and ones reading Cologne, Rotterdam, soon Paris. In 2021, the group were, you get my point. I'm not going to keep reading their dumb shit because it's gross. But in 2021, the group launched in Normandy, the French-speaking part of Switzerland. The Swiss group has tried to gain attention at the feminist strike, whose representatives responded that this group is riding the purple bandwagon and uses it not to promote the freedom of women, but rather discrimination towards targets, notably foreigners. So this guy was with a group called Revenge, the Revenge Collective, and was fighting with people and forcing themselves into feminist protests. And now Macron calls for calm as a tribute rally for slain far-right activists begins in Lyon. It's basically Nazis saying foreigners are rapists. It's criminal foreigner. It's Nazi rhetoric 101. You look at any time a crime is committed by an immigrant, you use it to tar and feather all immigrants. You only have this kind of form of thought when speaking about immigrants. You don't have this form of thought when speaking about most common forms of rape are acquaintance rape. A tribute rally for slain far-right activist Quentin Duranc, who was fatally beaten in a street brawl. I mean, it's a street brawl. You go into a street brawl, you get your ass beat. It's not murder. It's manslaughter. And that is the type of stuff. I mean, that's the reality. Mutual combat. You know, what do you want me to say? Is it good? No, it's not good. We shouldn't allow that. Bad stuff. The call to join the march was widely shared on social media by far-right fringe groups, including the National Revolutionary Albergros Bourgogne, the feminist collective Nemesis, the national identitarian group Aldous Lyon, and the monarchist, nationalist, and anti-republican movement Action Francaise. I don't know how to speak. Before the procession set off, a tribute to Quentin was held at the Traditionalist Church of St. George's, where services were conducted in Latin and which the young man attended. He was an adult convert. Macron said he will hold a meeting with ministers next week to carry out a comprehensive review of all violent activist groups that have links to political parties. He hinted that subgroups could be dismantled. In the Republic, no violence is legitimate, he said. There's no place for militias, wherever they come from. We must be absolutely uncompromising. So Macron's main goal is to try to target, disarm, and disorganize the left while the far right is rising throughout Europe. Something to keep in mind. The centrists are trying to make it so that only Nazi groups can exist. The main tribute to Duranc took place in Lyon, where clashes between far-right activists and far-left groups have become frequent. Their fighting often takes the form of organized street battles in the cities, sometimes involving groups of several dozen people. Lyon's far-left-leaning militant groups are more recent and were created in reaction to the many far-right groups that have been present for several decades. Notice how they had no problem with that. Notice how Macron had no problem with far-right activist groups existing and committing violence for decades. The moment they get into a street brawl that they lose, now suddenly the state is coming in to dismantle the far left. The city is seen by intelligence services as the cradle of the far-right activism in France.
The tribute march is expected to begin at 3 p.m. local time. People have already started to gather. As you can see behind me, I was speaking to a man just a few moments ago, a 55-year-old man, who said that he was here because it could have been his son. Now, there's going to be a short but symbolic march of about 1.4 kilometers that will end at the very spot where Quentin Deronque was killed last week. Now, a few of his close friends are expected to speak. We were able to meet one of him a few moments ago. There will then be a minute of silence, and flowers are expected to then be placed on the spot where Quentin Deronque was killed. Now, there has been a lot of legal and political debate over whether this event should have even been allowed to take place in the first place. Lyon's mayor initially called for a ban on the event, saying that he was afraid that there could be a de-escalation of violence between ultra-right and ultra-left groups. But then France's interior minister overrode that ban, citing freedom of expression. But he did say that there would be a very heavy police presence here, and we have already been able to see.
What about the free speech for the fascists? Meanwhile, Macron just said the other day that free speech is overrated. Like, he literally just said that like 5 minutes ago. Hold on.
Quite a few police officers.
Here, hold on. Having just no clue about how the algorithm is made.
About how the algorithm is made, how it is tested, how it is trained, and where it will guide you. I mean, the democratic consequences of this bias could be huge. Some of them claim to be in favor of free speech. Okay, we're in favor of free algorithm, totally transparent. Because, I mean, free speech is a pure bull. Nobody knows how you are guided through this so-called free speech, especially when it's to be guided from one hated speech to another. Having just
If you trust Emmanuel Macron to control your speech and what you can see, I think you're a born slave.
Some, you mentioned François Hollande, but some voices on the Socialist Party, which has already been...
What do you think about the theory that Western governments have mostly given up fighting climate change and are turning to the far right to control the chaos that would occur? That would imply more competence with our governments than actually exists. They are not competent. They are absolutely not competent. They are... The actual reality is a little bit more complicated, but even less satisfying. It's why 9/11 isn't an inside job. They're not good enough at ruling this world to do that. Literally. Like, they're not competent enough. This country is mostly ruled by tiny little capitalist fiefdoms. And our governments are mostly corrupted in their very essence. So what do we do about climate change? Well, the answer is, who's the powerful donors and industry groups and capitalists behind the green transition? They're weak compared to a massive oil and gas industry. So the oil and gas industry, the coal industry, the fossil fuel industries, the incumbent power companies, they all profit from the status quo. And so they spend billions of dollars to maintain it. So we're not doing anything about climate change because our politicians are bought by the industry. It's not complicated. It's boring, honestly. It's standard corruption. And you go down every single issue, and the reason why we have bad policies on every issue is that there is a powerful incumbent, there is a group of very rich people that are profiting, and they buy the politicians to get the public policy that keeps their money flowing. Not complicated, not exciting, not even interesting. You know, what is interesting is the solution. And the solution is, of course, it's a very, we come in, you know, we ride at whatever outrage we can to power, and then we pass new laws making this type of corruption a death penalty offense. You know, we pack the Supreme Court, you make it a death penalty offense, and then you just start catching people, you know, and it's a two-way offense. The briber and the bribee both face that. It's not just one way. And like, obviously, this is not my preference. I'm not happy about this. You know, back in 2016, I was like, well, we need to make sure that we get a majority on the Supreme Court to overturn Citizens United. In 2016, I was voting for Hillary Clinton with my tongue firmly in my cheek because it was a 4-4 Supreme Court. we had an opportunity to perhaps have a left-leaning Supreme Court. It would have been the first left-leaning Supreme Court with a majority of Democratic appointees since 1960. Think about that. We haven't had a left-leaning Supreme Court with a majority of Democratic appointees since 1960. Maybe it's 1965. I don't know. It's like that. The last time the left was strong in this country. But that's gone. You can't vote for a single president and then get a majority on the Supreme Court who's going to deliver us some solid, Supreme Court decisions declaring gerrymandering illegal, declaring climate change to be a real problem that can be regulated by the EPA under the Clean Air Act, that can, overturn Citizens United and reinstate McCain-Feingold campaign finance law and all sorts of other shit. That's gone. That's not happening. There is no return to that. That politics has been annihilated. And that's the reality we face.
Loggerheads with the friends and Bouts over several months to say we need to cut ties because this could also damage us. But there is no consensus within the socialists. I mean, many of the socialist militants were brought up essentially to fight fascism. So for them, the enemy is the far right. It's very, very difficult for them to turn around and say we might have problems on the far left because many of them were militants with members of France and Bell. Let's not forget, Jean-Luc Mélenchon was a socialist. He was a socialist minister, actually, a quarter of a century ago, before he broke ranks. So they all come from the left, which was often at loggerheads with the right, but especially with the far right. So it's difficult within the Socialist Party to totally break ranks. We haven't heard much from the leader of the Socialist Party, Olivier Faure. Clearly, there is malaise. We'll have to see where the investigation leads, but this is indeed creating tensions. Some might say it might also provide some clarification about the alliances on the left for the forthcoming municipal elections in a few weeks, but more importantly for the presidential election in 2027.
And you mentioned those mayoral elections just quickly. The voter in all this, the far right have used this occasion to say that there should be a Front Républicain, which is where French voters are asked to vote tactically in the past to block the far right candidates getting any seats. And now there will be calls to do the same thing to block far left candidates from getting seats. Do you think?
Oh, well, that's exactly what I predicted they were going to try to do. Because ultimately, centrists love fascism. Fascism, what you have to understand about fascism is every fail son and fail daughter who's a fucking loser, who has they're marginalized from the system, but they're not marginalized from the system because of something that's unfair. They're marginalized from the system because they're incompetent. They're ugly. They are stupid. They are the people who have all the advantages in the world and then come up short, right? They are the losers of capitalist competition, but not because of unfairness or inequity, but because they are just, they are pieces of shit. Like that's the reality of who the far right is. They are privileged, wealthy people who nonetheless failed. That's who makes up the ranks of the far right. And so in order to recover from their ego, which is really what dominates far right politics, that protection of the self, protection of the ego, they have to find these scapegoats. And ultimately, centrists understand that fascism's one. They'll maintain the status quo. They'll maintain the status quo. They'll maintain capital. There's no conflict between Macron and the far right. They'll get along like best friends. And if you could train people to blame a scapegoat, to blame an other, and they don't know how to analyze fucking reality, that is how you maintain control. And that's why there's such a focus on undermining education. Because if you have an education, you can analyze things critically, and then you could realize that, oh, wait a minute. Labor share of wages is at a record low. Why are the capitalists getting so much compensation? Why are the capitalists getting all the gains from trade and productivity growth? Maybe we should do something about that to increase the power of workers. Analyzing correctly alert. Tell him it's a fucking immigrant. That's the reality of what we're facing. And this is not a hard prediction to make. It is just power mapping. It's understanding that fascists are people that will be bought off. We will advance your position in society if you help us maintain control by targeting the left and the scapegoats, That is the deal that every centrist is desperate to make, which is exactly what they're discussing.
That any voters will heed that?
Well, first of all, we have to just measure the change you just mentioned. I mean, for years, and including in the last election, the snap election, which was called by Emmanuel Macron, there was indeed a Republican front against the National Rally to prevent them from gaining seats in the National Assembly. This was in 2024, not 15 years ago. Now there is talk of a reverse Republican front against the far left. And clearly the National Rally is now very happy because they've been considered outside of the Republican realm a far-right party, a party that doesn't really respect the Republic, and now they're enjoying the show. They're just sitting and watching the France and Bao being called by the French authorities a far-left party, being associated with violence. This has been the case for the National Rally for years. Many people have died at the hands of the far-right over the last 10 years or so, and some of the attackers were associated with the National Rally indirectly in some cases, but more directly in others. So now you're seeing a reversal, and the National Rally, which is already riding very high in the polls, can only benefit from the latest developments. We'll have to see in the municipal elections, yes, but those are local elections, so it's very different from one town to the other. But obviously, they have their eyes trained on the presidential election, and clearly they are the favorites. If it's Marine Le Pen or Jordan Bardella, it doesn't really matter. Now the odds are that they would really be on top in the first round, and that they would really have a shot at winning the presidency. It's in a little more than a year. It always seemed very far away, but now we're getting there, and the latest developments can only boost them.
So boring to be right. It's so boring to be this right. God, it's so pathetic, dude. So pathetic. All right, I think I'm done talking about this. It's just going to make me even madder. And, you know, what's really interesting is that had you been in Europe in the 20s, and you said, and you talked to the average European, and you were like, and you described Hitler, and you described the rise of a virulent anti-Jewish party to power, most people would have thought that it would happen in France. The nature of the anti-Semitism and fascist power within France was readily apparent. And we're gonna 30 days of streaming in a row. I want people to know about this. This is the kind of value you get from Mike from PA. This is the kind of value you get from Mike from PA. He just shows up for you, chat. He just shows up. Day in, day out. I get sick, I'm here. I'm healthy, I'm here. I'm here early. I'm Mr. Reliable. You know, I'm really enjoying these weekend streams, man. I'd hate to keep... I liked having some time off for rot days. I think it's good for your mental, but, you know, for some reason, I've just feel rejuvenated. I think it's because... You know what it is, chat? I think it's because every day, you know, I feel like this is my moment, you know? What I've been saying about politics is coming true. My prediction that AOC was going to be it. Like, how long have I been saying that? Everything I predicted about AOC is coming true. Everything I predicted about dumb fucking ultras is coming true. Everything it's like my analysis has just been completely indicated over and over. So I think that's been motivating me to want to produce more and try to influence things more, not because of ego, but because I really believe we can win. Mike, why does your internet work so much better than Hassan's? You want to hear the honest to God truth? You want to hear the honest to God truth? I choose where I live based on the quality of the internet. Do I have fiber? Yes. In fact, like my internet is, I actually could get a lot better. I only have 1 gig up and down, but I could get 5 if I wanted. Oh no, why is my internet so shitty today? The fuck? Okay, something weird's going on. But now I was like, oh, I pick up my internet. Now my internet's shitty today. What the fuck? Okay.
We're just talking about Hillary Clinton as a...
I live in rural ass Kentucky and have the cheapest fiber package at 300 megabits. In Chattanooga, you get 25 gigs. Yeah, because they have state owned. Iran says U.S. officials have accepted their red line of continuing to enrich uranium, and both sides are seeking a fast deal per Bloomberg. Okay, that's from Megatron Ron. So Maybe, you know, hopefully Megatron Ron is right. This next story is fucking insane. A UK tourist in the United States was detained for 6 weeks, even though they had a valid tourist visa. That's fucking batshit. He's gonna get the exact same deal as Obama and claim it as a win. That would be a huge win. That would be a huge fucking win. Oh, wait. Let me stop you there. If Donald Trump signed a deal with Iran and stopped sanctioning them and stopped attacking them and allowed them to have a nuclear program, that would be a huge win. That would be great. Why would anyone come to the US now? I don't know. I think it's fucking crazy. By the way, thank you guys for all the resubs. Appreciate you. The amount of things that people are trying to get you to subscribe to right now is so fucking annoying. The internet really has become shit. The internet really has become fucking shit. Which reminds me. Oh, fuck. Guys, Tony Gilroy gave an interview. He finally unleashed the truth about Andor. So we might have to check that out. I wish people would record this kind of shit. I like, honest to God. Like, I get that we all love text. I get that we love text, but this is 2020 fucking 6. I'm the only person who reads anymore. Wikipedia has blacklisted archive.today. Wait, what? Oh, is this a bad archive site? Or is this a good is it a good site? It's not the Internet Archive. This is like a weird one. Okay, chatter. I love chatters. All right, let's keep going. Holy Toledo chat.
A peg, really, for what's going on with the...
I talked to Q, and you two are really great. He said you're annoying after AOC followed you, though. I told him to chill, and I love you both. The reality is that he's fucking Canadian. And there's never been a Canadian that gave a good take on American politics. All right? Like, let's be brutally fucking honest for a second, okay? Let's just be brutally fucking honest. And there's a lot of people who have... I'll say this, and I'll say it loud, and I'll say it proud. The Republican Party is demonic. The Republican Party is far worse than you could ever imagine. The Democrats' corruption is measured by how close they are to the Republican Party. Okay? There is no redeeming characteristics to the Republican Party. None. Not one thing. Okay? The crisis we have is we don't have enough resistance to the Republican Party. And so the Democratic Party, by being a collaborator party, is putting us into the hands of demons. Okay? But there is a difference between the two. Okay, there is a difference between the two. There's not enough of a difference, but there is a difference. And the reason why we're in this predicament is because there's not a big enough difference. And the Republicans never suffer for the crimes they commit. And that's why we're in this crisis. So in order for us to be saved, the Democratic Party or the left party, whatever that is, has to improve. And I have to tell you that AOC has consistently been on the right side of pretty much every single issue. Even if she fucks up, says the wrong thing here or there, makes a cringe tweet, makes one bad vote out of 9,000. Like, I ultimately need you to not become one of those types of people that throws your hands up in the air and becomes a stupid cynic. There's two types of cynicism. Stupid cynicism and smart cynicism. Smart cynicism is looking at reality, looking at the parties that exist, and navigating with your eyes wide open. Stupid cynicism is going, well, everything's the same. I don't have to do anything. They're all equally bad. La-di-da. The world's going to magically fix itself. That's ridiculous. Your take, which is really my take that you stole. People know everything about American politics, but don't know who their own local mayor/reps are. I mean, people don't know shit about dick. That's why I advocate for us to actually use terms correctly and define them. Neolibs versus fascists, for example, both can be imperialists and colonizers, but not the same. The problem, Dragon Gaming, is that neoliberals include fascists. Neoliberalism is both an ideological perspective, but also it's not a singular political orientation. Donald Trump is largely a neoliberal. So is Macron. They have some differences on certain government policies, but largely they have faith in markets, and they believe the government's job is to facilitate markets. And they are extremely skeptical of any kind of government provided services, government intervention in the economy. They think everything should be privatized and that the market is the number one value. They both agree on that. They're both neoliberal in that sense.
The Epstein files, which is extreme interest. This is not going away, Harry.
No, it is not going away. If the Trump administration and Donald Trump in particular believe that they can wish this story away, the American public have a different tune to sing. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look at Google searches for Epstein. In fact, in the month of February, it is higher than it's ever been. Up like a rocket, up 900% versus a month ago. And the top name associated with Googling for Epstein, well, it is Donald. So the story isn't not going away. It's actually getting searched more and more and more, becoming more relevant in the minds of the American public.
It's so interesting. This is, more than it was when Congress voted to force a release them, more than it was when they actually released some of them, more than it was when they released more of them. Now it's the most it's ever been.
The most it has ever been, and the previous highs were also very high.
All right, let's talk about what this means for President Trump. How do people view his handling of the whole issue?
Yeah, this is bad political news for President Trump. Yesterday we spoke about the fact that Donald Trump's overall approval rating, his net approval rating, was at a record low for term number 2. What is the worst issue for Donald Trump of any of the major issues? Look at this. We got them all up on the screen. Immigration, foreign policy, the economy, trade and tariffs, and then all the way down at the bottom is the Epstein case. Look, he's underwater on immigration, foreign policy, the economy, and tariffs, all between minus 16 and minus 25 points. The Epstein case,
Toledo. Holy Toledo. There's this French streamer chat. He seems kind of cool.
Is on another planet. Look at this.
She speaks English.
Negative 39 points. He's 39 points underwater. Basically a split between 30% approve and 70% disapprove. The Epstein case is not the story the Trump administration and Trump in particular and Republicans at large want in the news, because it is a big political loser for him, and these numbers have remained very consistent. No matter which poll you look at, he's about 40 underwater in the Epstein case, by far his worst issue, and he's not actually good on the rest of mine.
Yeah, from a political standpoint, ABE, anything but Epstein, really, for President Trump there. How about among Republicans?
Okay, so if the Epstein case is something that absolutely is terrible in the minds of the center of the electorate, among independents, in fact, the number is closer to minus 50 on the net approval. If it's absolutely terrible among the center of the electorate, among Republicans, look at this. GOP who approve of Trump, immigration, the economy, foreign policy, trade and tariffs, all of them basically between 77 and 85. But look at the Epstein case. Just 55% of Republicans approve of Trump on the Epstein case. It is something that divides Republicans, and it is something that the overall electorate really doesn't like.
I mean, they love him on almost everything else, but Epstein, not so much.
Not so much, and that's the reason why Thomas Massey's attacks really seem to have an impact. Look at this. I got 4 numbers across for you on this screen here. They are...
Donald Trump on the AP is now negative 26. Woo! Do you guys think that Donald Trump will start a war with Iran, hoping that there'll be some sort of nationalist just for the midterms, recognizing that his support will crash later? Is that kind of the plan, do you think? It's basically like using meth. It's bad for you, but you get to finish the, you're a truck driver trying to get across the country. So you use meth to get the job done, knowing that there's going to be penalties for this later. That's kind of what it feels like.
All second-term lows for the given pollster. What are we talking about? AP Newark, 26 points below water. NBC, 22 points below water. Yahoo YouGov, 20 points below water. Quinnipiac, 19 points below water. So we're ranging from negative 19 points all the way to negative 26 points. Kate, there's this question that folks keep asking. Where is the floor for Donald Trump? And I'm not sure there is a floor, because if there is one, Donald Trump, at least in term number 2, has just fallen through it to another low level.
How does this compare with his first term, and how does this compare with Joe Biden?
Okay, so we look at these numbers right here. One of the things that Donald Trump had been arguing, his proponents have been arguing, you know what, he's doing better than he was doing in term number 1. No longer is that the case. What are we talking about here? Okay, net approval rating at this point in the term. Look at this. 22 points below water on average when you average all the pollsters from the last slide. That is actually lower. That is lower than he was at this point in term number 1, when he was 17 points below water. So he's doing 5 points worse, and he's doing way worse than Joe Biden was doing at this point in his term number 1, when he was 13 points below water. So the bottom line is this: Donald Trump is setting new records for himself in term number 2. 2, setting new records for himself compared to where he was at this point in term number 1. And he's doing worse than Joe Biden, which is, of course, the comparison that Donald Trump does not want to be, because we all know what happened to Joe Biden. His party lost the House in term number 1, that midterm elections. And, of course, Joe Biden was not reelected to another term. At this point, the numbers are no bueno for the President of the United States.
What's driving this that you're seeing right now?
Okay, Kate. You know what? This is the segment. We have done it over and over and over again because he keeps setting new lows for himself. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about independence. We're talking about independence. When you lose the center of the electorate, you lose the American people. Trump's net approval rating among independents, you know, at this point, you go back term number 1, he was 17 points below water. Now, according to Quinnipiac, he is 27 points below water. I don't understand how this works out well for the President of the United States. When you are 27 points below water, underwater, with the center of the electorate, with independents, you lose, your party loses. You know, I've made the comparisons before, you know, oh, he's more underwater than Greg Louganis. I've made the comparisons with all those different divers. And the bottom line is this: you can continue to make those, but over time, when you keep making those same comparisons, they run a little bit old. But at this point, I don't really know who to even compare Donald Trump to, because he's just so low, and he's so low with the center of the electorate. Governors have a whole lot of power, and there's all this talk of a Democratic wave, but the gubernatorial races nationwide...
Look at how bad the Democrats are doing in the governor's races. This is actually I wanted to cover this. It's so fucking crazy how bad they're doing. You would not believe how bad the Democrats are doing. Hey, what's up?
Should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, a wake-up call for Democrats, because take a look here. The race raiders, governors post-2026 election, at least tilting to the Republicans. Look at this. A majority, 26. That is, at this point, the number of governors that are expected, at least tilting towards the Republican Party at this point. Democrats come in at just 20. The rest of the races are toss-up. Of course, you sum up to 50. And I will note that the Republicans right now hold a 26 to 24 gubernatorial seat advantage. So at this point, it doesn't look like Republicans on the net and the aggregate are actually going to lose any governorships. In fact, when you add in those toss-ups, they may gain. So this should stand as a major wake-up call to Democrats, because if there's a wave building, it has not, at least at this point, hit the state level when it comes to governorships.
And add to that, you point out that when it comes to governor's races, Democrats have had a bit of a problem over recent years.
Yeah, they have had a big problem recently. If you go back, the last time that Democrats held a majority of governorships was all the way back in 2010, and that streak is expected to continue. And I will note, I went all the way back through the record books, Kate Baldwin. I went all the way back through the record books. This is now the longest streak in which Democrats did not hold a majority of governorships in at least a century. This is a massive problem for Democrats, because, as we mentioned at the top, a lot of the policy is determined on the state level. And if all of a sudden you can't actually lead a majority of governorships, the executive branch on the state level, that means Republicans are, in fact, forming and implementing most of the policies in the states, and therefore a lot of the policies nationwide.
Well, and the power of the governor also has to do with how the state legislature it looks. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, okay. So it's not just the governorships. How about those state legislatures, right? Okay, take a look here. Republicans have held a majority of state legislatures since 2012. And again, this is the longest such streak.
This is the collapse that Barack Obama gave us. This is a very important thing to understand. This is the collapse that Barack Obama did to the Democratic Party. This is Obama's legacy. This is actual Obama's legacy. The other factor of this is, like, why the fuck do we have states? It made sense when you had this giant country and we didn't have the technology to really communicate instantaneously between, you know, the different cities of this far-flung nation. Like, it made sense back in 1850, okay? But now that we have instantaneous communication, we don't need to prop up an endless bureaucracy of the state level. Think about how much money we would save if we stopped duplicating all this bureaucracy at the state level.
Dating back at least a century in which Republicans have held the majority of the state legislatures. In fact, for much of the 20th century, what you saw was Democrats actually held more state legislatures than Republicans did. And now it is the exact opposite. And if you go state legislature by state legislature, at this point, it seems likely, of course, still uncertain, since we have a number of months until November elections, that Republicans will continue the streak of holding the majority of state legislatures, continue their streak of holding the majority of governorships, and therefore Democrats will be locked out of holding a power in positions that really do determine a lot of the policy nationwide. As I said, this should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, because at this point, Republicans look like they're going to continue to hold the majority of governorships. What the holiday is exactly called? Well, it depends on what state you're in. What are we talking about here? Well, for some of us, tomorrow is President's Day. But how the heck do you spell presidents in the President's Day? Well, in Hawaii, look at this. You get presidents, an S, and then an apostrophe. Nebraska, though, well, they disagree out there, the Cornhuskers. What do they say? Well, they have the apostrophe, but it becomes after the T and before the S. How about in Oregon? Well, the Ducks out there, they say, you know what? We don't need that stinking apostrophe, so it's just President's Day with no apostrophe.
I think if someone tried to make me do this type of like content, never mind, chat. I've decided to censor myself. I don't want to get banned on the 30th day of my streak. Let's just say Pennsylvania treasurer treatment.
Whatsoever. Of course, maybe tomorrow isn't President's Day. Maybe it's some version of celebrating Washington's birthday. Well, that's exactly the case in Iowa. It's Washington's birthday. That's who's getting celebrated tomorrow. How about in Ohio? Well, they say, you know what? One president's not enough. All of them is too many. So in Ohio, what we're doing is we're celebrating both Washington and Lincoln. Of course, Lincoln's birthday taking place earlier in the month of February. And they decide, you know what, we're going to combine two presidents into one day, being, of course, the third Monday in the month of February. How about in Alabama? Well, down south, they say, you know what, we're going to drop Lincoln. We're going to drop Lincoln from this holiday. Instead, we're going to add a guy from Virginia. We're going to celebrate two guys from Virginia. We're going to add Washington and Jefferson together, two for the price of one. Of course, sometimes maybe we're not celebrating Washington at all. Maybe we're not celebrating the presidents at all. How about this? Okay, is tomorrow a holiday? Yes, in California, it is a holiday, but according to the state code, guess what? No name. There's no name for the holiday tomorrow. It's not President's Day. It's not Washington's birthday. How about in Georgia? Where, of course, CNN was born. CNN was born in Georgia. Well, tomorrow, guess what? They decide, you know what? We are going to celebrate Washington's birthday, but we're going to push it. We're going to push it all the way to Christmas Eve. So Washington's birthday is actually observed on December 24th. And then in Delaware, you know what they say? We got enough holidays already. So tomorrow, it ain't no holiday at all. So the answer in Delaware, of course, the first state to ratify the Constitution, you know what they say? We don't need no holiday tomorrow. Not Washington's birthday, not President's Day, nothing, nada, nothing. But the question is, okay, is tomorrow a holiday? Most states say yes, okay? Is it Washington's birthday or some version thereof? Is it President's Day and some version in thereof? And, of course, if it is President's Day, how exactly do you spell it? Well, we go to Google for the answer. What do most people Google? Well, the most Googled version of tomorrow's holiday is, it's right here, President's Day with no apostrophe. So, Paula Reed, I wish you a happy early President's Day. Of course, maybe, you know what, you decide it's going to be like the state of New York. It's just going to be, we're going to celebrate Washington's birthday. Observe, because, of course, keep in mind, Washington was actually born on February 22nd, which can never be the third Monday in the month of February. This entire holiday, you know what, it's a little bit screwed up, but I'm just going to take the day off. Happy early, I guess, Washington's birthday, at least for us here in New York. Back to you. RFK Jr. and the CDC have absolutely destroyed their reputation when it comes to.
Why do they have Harry Enton do that? That's what I want to know. I'm just confused. I watched the whole thing in some sort. I'm like in a fugue state. I feel like I lost life. It's like they're not talking like CNN, man. Think about all the stories they could cover. Like, for example, the UK tourist that's been in ICE custody for 6 weeks. All right, let's talk about this shit. Don't go to the U.S. Not with Trump in charge. The UK tourist with a valid visa detained by ICE for 6 weeks. Karen Newton was in America on a trip of a lifetime when she was shackled, transported, and held for weeks on end. With tourism to the U.S. under increasing strain, she says, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. True. Average experience. I'm not a criminal. I don't even have parking tickets. When Karen Newton left home in July 2025, she knew that international travelers were being locked up in immigration detention centers in the U.S. I was aware, she nods, but I never thought it would have any impact on my holiday. Be the most unsympathetic person possible. But honestly, libs need to hear that. Libs need to hear this. What French left-wing streamer were you going to recommend earlier? Do you speak French? Because I think they only speak French. Emodem, EMMODEM. Let me know if you speak French. Let me know if they're cool. They seem cool, but maybe I'm wrong. Just let me know. I just discovered them, so they were in my list of people to check out, see if they're cool. All right. There's so many Europeans being detained by ICE now. Why is there no coverage of this story? It's fucking crazy. Like, are the Brits even covering this shit? Or is it just The Guardian? I never thought it would have any impact on my holiday. She had a British passport and a tourist visa. She hadn't been abroad for 8 years and was keen for some guaranteed sun. I really just wanted to get away from the house. She and her husband, Bill, had an ambitious itinerary which would take them through California, Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, and then on to Canada over 2 months. Las Vegas wasn't the Karen's taste, way too commercialized. She much preferred Yellowstone, where they saw Old Faithful, the famous geyser, as it shot boiling water into the air and got up close with some extraordinary wildlife. There was a bison right next to the car. Another time, a wolf walked past. It was just amazing. Notice how nobody likes capitalism and everybody likes state-mandated national parks? Like the wonder and the amazingness of the beauty of nature compared to a fucking disgusting piece of shit city that sucks. What a surprise. The dream holiday ended abruptly on Friday, 26 September, as Karen and Bill were trying to leave the U.S. When they crossed the border, Canadian officials told them they didn't have the correct paperwork to bring the car with them. They were turned back to Montana on the American side and to U.S. Border Control officials. Bill's U.S. visa had expired, Karen's had not. I worried then, she said. I was worried for him. I thought, well, at least I am here to support him. She didn't know it at the time, but it was the beginning of an ordeal that would see Karen handcuffed, shackled, and sleeping on the floor of a locked cell. They literally arrested a white Karen. If you want to understand how fucking out of control ICE is, they're arresting white Karens who didn't even have paperwork wrong. The paperwork they had wrong was bringing their rental car into Canada, which is an easy fix. You turn in the car at the car rental place, hop on a bus, or something that's transiting the border. You transit the border, you rent a car on the Canadian side. Done. Easy fix. Easy fix. Not that big a deal. Or you call the rental place and you get the right paperwork, which I don't know if that exists because it kind of, well, I mean, maybe it does. But it was the beginning of an ordeal that would see Karen handcuffed, shackled, and sleeping on the floor of a locked cell before being driven for 12 hours through the night to an Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention center. Karen was incarcerated for 6 weeks, even though she had been traveling with a valid visa. I don't know what to say. I don't know what the fuck to say. They were leaving. They were leaving the country. Karen has no criminal record. She is a grandmother who spent 8 years working as an admin assistant at a primary school before retirement. I don't even have parking tickets in the background anywhere, she says. I am not a dangerous criminal. I didn't enter the country illegally, and I had everything I needed to be there. So why did ICE detain her and keep her up for so long? The answer is they don't follow any rules, you dumb fucks. It's a fascist government. They live in what the fascists call a state of exception, where they just do whatever the fuck they want. They don't have to justify it. They just do it. There is no rules. There is no process. They have the money. They have the state. They have the guns. They do whatever the fuck they want. You're out here living your life, according to the old rules, because that's what you're used to. But if you run into ICE agents, they are lawless. And all the other institutions of the government are going to defend them. So if you try to confront ICE, cops are going to go after you. The military is going to go after you. The National Guards are going to go after you. All the stuff, the normal state apparatus, are all conscripted for ICE. They are all ICE. They're all working with ICE. There's no difference. So you're out here living your normal life, doing normal things. And the only question is, are you unlucky enough to get into a confrontation with ICE, even if you did nothing wrong? I think people have a hard time accepting this reality. That's where we're at. Rubicon crossed. They have quotas to fill. Exactly. Did you arrest a foreigner? Yes. Check mark. That's all they care about. A possible answer began to emerge over the week she was incarcerated. As Karen got to know the guards at Northwest ICE Processing Center where she was held, she kept hearing the same thing from them, that ICE officers are paid a bonus every time they detain someone. Individual ICE agents get money per head they detain. The guards told me that, Karen says. So they have bounties on all foreigners that gets paid no matter if it's legitimate or not. This is quite simply a crime. And the Democratic Party's not even talking about it. One of the things that's like scary to me is not only is this happening, I'm talking about it, I care deeply about it, but I doubt other people do. And I don't know why. I'm kind of like, wow. It's no secret that the Trump administration has been pouring money into ICE. Its annual budget, $6 billion a decade ago, is now $85 billion, which, by the way, could pay for free college for all. What we're spending on ICE right now, $85 billion, could free college for all. ICE is now the highest funded law enforcement agency in the U.S. Since last August, new recruits can expect to receive a signing on bonus of $50,000. Karen's experience has left her convinced that ICE agents are being given even more incentives to arrest and detain anyone they possibly can, even blameless tourists who have all the paperwork they need to be in the United States. I think, I mean, basically my general take is that if you come to the United States as a tourist right now, you're fucking insane.
Well, joining me on set now is Julien Pereira, a 26-year-old French citizen who had more than his own run-in with ICE. Julien was detained for a month. Hello to you, Julien. Thank you for coming in. This happened in 2025. We get into your experience. Tell us about why you're speaking up about it now.
So honestly, I tried to speak about it like around July or June. I don't think it was such a big topic here in France. It was already quite a topic in the US. But seeing what's happening right now in Minneapolis, I thought it would be good to see, we see what's happening outside. We can see that on Twitter, everything. But I'd rather speak about what's happening inside too.
Yeah, and share your story. This happened in, was it May of 2025?
March. It started in March.
So tell us a bit about what happened, first of all.
So yeah, I was offered a job. I did all my bachelor, my MBA a few years before.
And you were living in the U.S. for 8 years.
Yeah, in total 8 years. Yeah. So I got offered a job switching from a student visa to a work visa.
Yeah.
We did everything correctly, as I thought. And one day my employer called me and he's like, hey, we had some issue with your visa. You need to leave today. The day, if you stay until
you need to leave the country today.
Right, yeah, today. And so I call him, I'm like, hey, it's a little bit complicated to leave the country. I have all my life here. I don't mind leaving, but when do I come back? And he's like, oh, we don't really know. So he tells me France is not possible because the timing is too tight. So we decided...
Because your lawyer also said,
yeah,
get out of the country.
Exactly. My lawyer, my employer. So I'm like, okay, I'm trying to take a flight to Montreal.
Yeah.
Which is not possible on the same day. We need to have like a special visa.
Okay.
You have to do it one day before. So my last option was to drive to Montreal, and that's where it all started.
That's where it all started. And so what happened next?
So I tried to drive to Canada, drive all the way to the border in Champlain, New York. And for some reason, I don't really know why, Canada denies me. Because they're like, yeah, we don't have proof that you can actually leave the country after. So I tried to...
So you can't stay in the country, but they're not going to let you leave the country.
Exactly, yeah. So... they put me back on the border of the US.
You have to go to another country, so that other country has to let you in. Such is how life.
That's where I started to talk to CBP.
By the way, this is all paperwork, minor issues. You buy a ticket. You say, hey, I'll buy a ticket to leave Canada. You know, I've just tried to get out of the US. But the Canadians are like, sorry, you might be an illegal immigrant to Canada.
The Custom Border Patrol.
Right.
And that's where they detained me.
And how did they...
Bro... honest to God, and I mean this man is too handsome to be in America. Get him out. Too much competition. Get him out of here. Get him out of here.
They handled that incident. Were they calm? Was it polite?
It was very cold. You know, they're just doing their job, I guess. Right. You know, but they didn't let me talk to my lawyer, to the consulate, to anyone. So I tried to explain my situation. I'm like, guys, like I'm just trying to leave the country. I'm not trying to come back. I want to stay legal in the country. I don't want to do anything wrong. And they didn't really honestly care about it.
Did they tell you what was going to happen next?
Yeah, so they put me in a cell for like 3 days.
They handcuff you before then?
No, so 3 days, no phone, nothing, no contact. And
not even with your family?
Very little, just to tell them, hey, I'm detained. If you can please call the consulate for me. Okay, so yeah, they detained me for 3 days, and they're like, okay, we're gonna have to wait for the judge to tell you it's either you're gonna fly home or we're gonna detain you to ICE.
And what were the conditions like?
In the cell for 3 days with the CBP, pretty rough. No bed, lighters went on, no windows, just you're lost pretty much. Pretty much no food, no shower.
And until this point, you had never broken a law. You had
no criminal case. I always pay my taxes. I always renew my visa on time, my work permissions. I always made sure to,
And did anyone there seem sympathetic with your case?
Yes, some officer, but
they just said this is procedure.
This is procedure. I guess they're all doing it.
Well, it's procedure. Time to go to the fucking concentration camp. I guess it's procedure time. Time to go to the concentration camp. Sorry, time to put you in the concentration camp. He's like, bro, I'm trying to leave. Like, why am I going to a concentration camp for me to leave? Why don't you just let me leave? Time to go to the concentration camp instead of leaving.
Job. They're following the guides, but.
And you lived in the country 8 years. You love America.
I love America. Yeah, I love.
Did you ever think you would see something like this happen?
That's what I was trying to explain to the officers. I'm like, guys, I love this country. I'm trying to do everything correctly. All my best friends are living here. Like, I have my job, I pay my taxes, I have an apartment. I want to live here.
How did it make you feel, the fact that they
But you're an immigrant, bro. You're a fucking immigrant, bro. You think they give a fuck? It's not even really about you being an immigrant. I think that's the thing that people don't understand. It's not even really about them being immigrants. The best way to understand the right is that it's just sadists looking for a pretense. These are not guys that care about America. What is America anyway? It is a mongrel nation. It is an amalgamation. It is a post-settler country. All the ideas about what makes it American have to do with populations coming from outside the U.S. and coming to the U.S. and welding themselves to the nation. There is no America without immigrants. So it's not about. I mean, a lot of ICE agents are fucking second-generation immigrants. Like, it is not about being an immigrant. It's not about being white. It's not about anything, really. It is a cabal of sadists who are looking for any pretext so they can commit harm and steal money. It's not really that hard. They are just vitriolically evil in just the kind of base sense. They're getting their rocks off. They enjoy it. You don't have to try to stop trying to justify this through the lens of ideology. The ideology is a smokescreen for what it really is, which is a weak, pathetic man looking to dominate others because they are too stupid to, handle the existential crisis of reckoning with reality. Am I close to joining the order? Yes. 10 more months. So stop trying to appeal to logic, procedure, evidence, justice, morality. You're talking to sadists that have a slave in chains. Do you think a slave could talk themselves out of slavery? Why not? Why can't an intelligent slave talk to his master and get himself released? Because slavery isn't about justice. In fact, the whole what slavery is dispenses with any conception of justice. It justifies itself via the advantage of those who control the system. That's the justification. Might makes right. I control you, therefore I should control you. The system relies on your compliance.
Like an animal, pretty much,
Right,
but they're following the guides,
You're a Frenchman. France has its own strong history of massive, well-organized protests. Yeah. When you see the protests that are happening in Minneapolis, but also in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, other places, do you think they match the the gravity of the situation, or should there be more protests?
Honestly, I think what they're doing right now it's a good thing, because when you see what's going on with the killings, with arresting everybody, it's just a matter of quotas, I guess, and I think they need to do something about it.
And what's your case now? Can you go back to America?
No, so I have an entry ban for, we don't know if it's 3 years or 5 years, but right now I cannot come back here.
You're banned.
I'm banned, yeah.
And so your life there, the friends you had, your employer, that chapter is closed in your life.
It's gone, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and
maybe one day I can come back, but.
And when you had your lawyer there, did he say your case, what you were experiencing, other people were going through the same thing, or were you sort of like falling through the cracks?
I was, kind of falling through the cracks, but the problem was, honestly, no one knew any procedures because the laws were changing at the time.
Right.
So my lawyer was telling me, it's just going to be a matter of 2 or 3 days, you'll be out very quickly. But I guess my lawyer didn't have a clue either. So.
And I'm wondering, you had this experience, you were detained for a month, you were cut off from your friends and family. In some ways, do you think that maybe you might have been lucky when we hear some of the other accounts that people are sharing about what they went through?
I've said it before, definitely lucky. Just being French helps already. Mm-hmm. Some guys some detainees have been there for like a year, 2 years. One of them was there for 5 years.
Could you speak to the other detainees?
Yeah, we could speak. Yeah, we were in a big unit, so like 80, 120 of us. So we could speak.
And how did the agents treat the other detainees?
They didn't care about us. Honestly, it was 1 or 2 agents in the unit for like 100, 120 detainees. So they didn't care. They were just doing their rounds. They didn't care.
I'm American. I know. A lot of Americans have said similar things, that they didn't think they would see images like this ever happen in their country. You're European.
So now they are happening. Now what? They are happening. Now what? They're happening in America. Now fucking what? I don't care that you never expected it. Who gives a fuck? I'm so tired of this rigmarole. Oh, I never thought I'd see this in my country. I voted for Kamala. Okay, shut up. No one fucking cares. Yeah, chat, I dropped some frames there, but it looks like we're good to go.
Later this week, the Winter Olympics are beginning.
Yeah.
ICE agents are being deployed to help protect Americans. How does that make you feel that ICE will actually be coming to European soil?
Honestly, what does an immigration, agency has to do, like in Italy over there? It looks like a political militia, honestly.
Do you think these sort of tactics might end up being employed by other, perhaps Western democracies where we didn't think we'd see them ever before?
What I'm afraid of is that some other countries, maybe this one, France too, become so polarized politically that we get to a point one day where we're going to have to use those agencies. But honestly, I hope not.
What have you heard from your American friends? Have you kept in touch with them? Have any of them sent you messages of support?
I talk to them every day. Yeah, it's a crazy story. Some of them are super scared because they're in the process of changing their visas too, or renewing them. Mm-hmm. Or some of them in a green card process. But yeah, no, they're freaking out. Mm-hmm. They're freaking out.
As of now, you're banned. We don't know if it's 3 years. We don't know if it's 5 years. Yeah. But in theory, it's not a permanent ban.
It is not. Yeah.
You think you'll be returning to America one day?
I hope I'll be able to come back one day, yeah. But I don't know how easy it's going to be for me. I'm going to have to explain myself, I guess, at the embassy. But I hope one day I'll be back for sure, yeah.
Within days of Donald Trump's second inauguration on January 2025, his administration ordered ICE officials to detain more people with new quotas that would increase the total number of arrests from a few hundred to 1,500 a day. Reports immediately began to emerge of international travelers being detained by ICE officers. On 25 January, German tourist Jessica Borsch was stopped by ICE and held for 45 days, including 8 days of solitary confinement. Early in February, Germans Lucas Seilaff and Fabian Schmidt were also detained. In late February, the British backpacker Rebecca Burke was incarcerated for 19 days in the same ICE facility where Karen would later spend 6 weeks. Like Karen, Burke had been trying to leave the U.S. when she was detained. Canadian actor Jasmine Mooney was held in an ICE detention center for 2 weeks in March. In July, New Zealander Sarah Shaw and her 6-year-old son were detained for 3 weeks.
One is the leader of the Greens in British Columbia. I met her. What is that? Okay, that's crazy.
We met Hassan Piker, the biggest left-wing streamer.
We'll watch that in a minute, chat. But I just want to say, like, isn't it so gratifying to know that a close buddy and pal is just recognized as one of the most prominent leftists in the world? I don't think Hassan gets that. Or if he does, he doesn't like to think about it because it's a scary thought. AOC did an AMA on Instagram for the first time in a while last night. Check it out now. I hate Meta, dude. Instagram is just Facebook for millennials. Do we have to use that shit? Can we just not? New Zealander Sarah Shaw and her 6-year-old son were detained for 3 weeks. These stories may be the tip of the iceberg. We only know about them because they involve people who were prepared to talk publicly about being seized by ICE. They are generally young people who were held on suspicion of being in the U.S. to work without the correct visa. That's why when Karen heard some of their stories before she left the UK, she assumed their experiences had no relevance to her. she was a retired person taking a holiday. In the end, Karen was detained for far longer than almost every one of them. I met Karen in her home on a quiet road in Hertfordshire. She sits at the corner of her sofa next to a magnifying light and a trolley that holds a sewing box, thread, and everything else she needs for cross-stitch. The walls of her home are adorned with frames containing her embroidery. The first thing you see when you come through the front door is a framed 9,000-piece puzzle of the Tower of Babel that took her 2 years to finish. I don't like staying away from home for a long time, she tells me, over tea and Jamie Dodger's biscuits. There couldn't be a more stereotypic British grandma than this. Her name is fucking Karen. It was scary. You have no way of knowing what's going to happen. It got darker and dark. I mean, like, I legitimately, like, when they returned back from Canada, the U.S. Border Control agent saw that Bill's visa has expired. Karen fully expected to be allowed to return home. The Newtons immediately offered to pay for their flights. They had funds available to cover the tickets, but the officials weren't interested, she says. Instead, they were taken into an office and made to wait there from 10:30 a.m. until nightfall. At first, Karen was bewildered. There's no reason to hold me, she says. Bill's an adult. Why am I held responsible for him? When she asked why she was being detained, an officer told her his supervisor had instructed him to hold her. The hours ticked by. It was scary. You have no way of knowing what's going to happen. It got darker and darker, and then the other agents turned up with all these chains and handcuffs. Karen and Bill were shackled at the wrists, waist, and ankles, and bundled into a vehicle. Karen doesn't know how long they were on the road for. It just seemed like a never-ending day. They arrived at Sweetgrass Border Patrol Station in Montana in the middle of the night and were held there for 3 days, sharing a cell without beds. They slept on mats on the floor under foil blankets. I was very nervous and frightened the whole time, and I was chilled to the bone. I couldn't warm up. They were interviewed separately. Karen was not offered a lawyer. She wasn't entitled to one, she says, because she had been detained rather than arrested. That's not correct. That's not correct. You have the right to an attorney. Anytime the definition of detention, whenever you're in custodial detention, your amendments attach. Okay? Meaning if you are not free to go, you have basically constructively been arrested. She was fucking arrested. Like, I don't know. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and this shouldn't be in the article. She didn't think she needed one anyway. I thought when they listen to me, when they come to their senses, they're going to let me go. I thought they might escort me to the airport and put us on a plane, hopefully both of us, but that didn't happen. Yeah, that's what they would do if they were not interested in doing a Gestapo's concentration camp to make money. Bill had been working in the U.S. with a valid work permit, but did not have a green card. Fed up with the appeals process, he had decided to leave and retire back in the UK. Karen was told that she was guilty by association and that she had broken the terms of her valid B2 tourist visa by helping her husband pack for the trip. It went from crazy to ridiculous. It felt like they just wanted an excuse to detain me. There was a way to make things easier, the agent said. Bill and Karen could volunteer for self-removal. Last May, the White House announced Project Homecoming, a scheme where so-called illegal aliens could opt for self-deportation. Anyone who agrees gets their flights home paid by the U.S. government, as well as an exit bonus payment of $1,000. The Department of Homeland Security announced on 21 January that the bonus had increased to $2,600 to celebrate 1 year of Trump. Project Homecoming was funded by repurposing $250 million previously intended to be spent on refugee aid. He said, if you volunteer for self-removal, and because of the special relationship the U.S. has with the UK, it will be over very quickly, Karen continues. They'd have to sign a document that would mean they would be banned from the U.S. for 10 years and waive their right to go before a judge. If they chose not to and waited for their day in court, it would be prolonging the ordeal, she was told. I said to him, I'm on holiday. I want to go home. Okay, if a government official is saying, sign this document, get a fucking lawyer. I don't need one. I'm signing documents and giving up my rights. What do I do? I am very smart. I would have taken the shortest route, whatever it was, which was, he said, was volunteering for self-removal. So they signed. Karen had no way of knowing that she was only on day 3 of what would turn out to be 42 days of detention. The Newtons were transferred in shackles once again. A border control SUV drove them from Sweetgrass to Spokane, where they waited for an hour before being put on what Karen calls a prison van and taken to Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma. It's called a detention facility, but it's really a prison, she says. Locking doors, guards everywhere, cells, everything clamped to the floor. It's how I imagine a prison to be. Prison would actually be better because if you're in prison, you get a sentence. They tell you how long you're going to be there. Karen was given a gray sweatshirt and jogging bottoms to wear and issued with an ID card wristband. She didn't allow herself to be afraid. I didn't want to give it headspace. I was in disbelief, incredulous that this could happen. This is like, honest to God, reading testimonials about the Holocaust. This is what they sound like. where people were just kept going along with it because it seems like the system was, and it just continues and continued and continued and continued. It's just, and then people are just in denial the whole time. In the early hours of the morning, she was separated from Bill and taken to the women's unit, a vast room filled with bunk beds and metal picnic tables. The guard on duty asked if she was able to climb a ladder to get on top of bunk, and Karen said she wasn't. I can't do heights, and I'm in my 60s. It's not something I wanted to do. Guard told Karen sharply that he was fed up with this crap. He led Karen to a cell on the mezzanine level where an inmate was occupying the lower bunk. The guard said, your choice is either the top bunk or the floor. So I set myself up on the floor. That's where I stayed for the next month. Karen had pain in her hips and back from sleeping on a thin mattress on the floor and constipation because she was afraid of going to the toilet at a place where everyone could watch her. Her cellmate, Maria, spoke no English, but they got along. Maria was an older woman, and Karen felt safe with her. After a month, Maria asked to be transferred to the cell on the ground floor because her knees couldn't handle the stairs up to the mezzanine level. So Karen eventually took over the bottom bunk. Time passed slowly at Tacoma, but Karen says she lost all sense of it. From her cell, she was unable to see one small clock affixed above a guard's desk in the main hall. The unit had no windows. The lights were always on, so it was difficult to tell night from day. Once, Karen woke up and went to make herself a cup of tea. She sat at one of the metal tables to drink it, and one of the other inmates asked her if she was having trouble sleeping. I said, I slept all night, and she smiled and said, what time of day do you think it is? The clock on the wall said 11:30. Karen had assumed it was 10:30 in the morning. I thought I had a night's sleep, and I hadn't. I must have been in bed for 3 hours. Karen tried to keep herself busy with jigsaw puzzles and books that were left out for inmates. She kept herself to herself much of the time, most of the other women who couldn't speak English anyway. But those who did shared traumatic stories of being separated from their young children and agonizing details of delays in their legal fight to stay in the country. Some had been living in the U.S. for decades, building lives and families. A few of them have been detained for more than a year. People think it's just criminals that are being deported, but they're just a lot of people who went here for a better life. Is that really criminal? While the Northwest Detention Center is an ICE facility, it is run by GEO, a private company. Aside from her experience with the first guard who took her to her cell, Karen says the staff were nice enough to her. None of them could understand why she was there. One of them said to me, you need to find a pro bono lawyer and sue. Another guard turned out to be British. I had several conversations with her. She said, I could understand them holding your husband, but I don't understand why they would hold you. Now, none of these guards did anything, right? Like, none of these guards did anything. They were just like, well, it doesn't seem fair you're here. Anyway, go back to your cell. It was during these conversations that Karen was told repeatedly that ICE agents are paid a bonus every time they detain someone. I was told this by multiple sources, she says. There is all the incentive in the world to find a reason, any reason, not to let someone go. Now, I want you to understand something, chat. This is how ICE operates. I can't speak. And it is. It is how ICE operates. When I contacted ICE, I asked if they could confirm or deny whether individual officers are paid a bonus for every person they detain. A spokesperson said, bonuses for ICE officers are not based on arrest or detention numbers. And bonuses for ICE officers are administered in accordance with Office of Personnel Management policy. ICE officers risk their own safety day in and day out because they took an oath to enforce the nation's immigration law, not to make large sums of money. After a couple of weeks, one of the guards asked Karen when she was going to see her husband. Until then, she had no idea she was entitled to. Guard told her she needed to apply for permission. At first, her application was turned down, but eventually she did get to see Bill. It was bittersweet. It was nice to see he was okay, but in a way, I wish. Her voice trails off. I brought it home more. It was a slap in the face. You're in a prison, and now you're going to have to go back to your unit. Karen had messaged her son Scott when they were initially held at the border. We have been unavoidably detained, she texts. I'll let you know when I am home. But her phone was due taken away from her. It was several weeks before she rang him from the detention center. Why did it take her so long? It was humiliating. Her eyes fall. I was ashamed to be locked up. When she was finally called Scott, he was angry with her for not having rung sooner. He had been worried ever since the first day. He had already contacted the UK Foreign Office, who eventually told him there was no way his parents could be released while the federal government shutdown was ongoing. It ran from 1 October to 12 November. Karen knew that this couldn't be true. She saw people leaving the detention center every day. In fact, ICE deported 56,000 people during the shutdown. Both Karen and Bill separately tried to contact the British consulate. After weeks of effort, Karen managed to speak to someone, but the consular official told her they couldn't interfere. She said they'd look into it, but we never heard from her again. They were absolutely terrible. Keir Starmer, the American bootlicker. I wonder if Europeans ever get ashamed of their governments. Every week, ICE agents would visit the unit to update inmates about any developments on their cases and tell them that they were going to leave the detention center. Their shock was 2 weeks or soon. 1 week, ICE didn't turn up at all. Karen began to feel hopeless. I was talking to others thinking maybe I should have gone the route of asking to see a judge. I was thinking, did I do the wrong thing? And then out of the blue on Thursday, 6 November, when the guards were doing a head count and the inmates were supposed to be locked in their cells, Karen's door suddenly opened. I thought it was some sort of glitch. She peeked out of her cell and saw a guard who informed her that she was being taken away from the unit to the intake area of the detention center and given her own clothes to change into. It was here that she was told Bill was being released too. Such a huge relief, but Karen would spend several more hours locked in a cell without him before they finally reunited, handcuffed, shackled once more, shuffled outside, and driven to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Karen arrived home in Herefordshire to find her car battery flat and her house plants dead. After failing to pay 2 months worth of bills, her credit score had been affected. There were mounds of posts and 6 weeks worth of emails that she had been trying to catch up on. Their luggage, which was confiscated when they were detained, has never been returned. Every so often, I think of something else that was in my suitcase that I'll never going to see again. Trump entered his second term in office promising a crackdown on unauthorized migrants. Ever since, tourists have suffered. And so has America's tourism industry. The U.S. saw 4.5 million fewer visits from international travelers in 2025. Visits from Canada were down 22%, from Germany more than 11%, and the UK 15%. U.S. has lost $15 billion in tourism revenue. It is expensive to detain people, keep them locked up for weeks on end, encourage them to declare themselves illegal aliens in exchange for a cash bonus, and cover the cost of their transportation home. Karen received the $1,000 bonus, but like others who have opted for self-deportation, Bill never received the payment. Karen is bewildered. They would prepared to spend so much money incarcerating her. I think Trump's insisted they generate figures on how many people they are detaining. I can't think of any other reason. ICE just do it because they can and because they are told to round up people and deport them. It seems to have gone down the slippery slope of just kicking everyone out who is an American, and now even Americans are getting in trouble. It's really scary. Tourist Rebecca Burke has another tourist that was detained. Don't go. Not with Trump in charge. It's totally out of control over there. There's no accountability. They don't seem to need a reason for detaining you. This year is a big one for international travel to the U.S. As one of the hosts of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the country is expecting to see tourists from across the globe. I worry about young people going out there for the World Cup. I really do. Imagine a group of young guys getting drunk at a game, getting arrested. I could see them easily ending up the same place as I did. They'll find some reason to detain them. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. All right, here's a video from Vox on what immigration was like before ICE.
So I noticed something interesting on the history page of ICE's website. Right here, it says, despite U.S. immigration and custom enforcement's relatively young age, its functional history predates the modern birth of the agency by more than 200 years. That phrase, functional history, stuck out to me, so I decided to do some digging.
It's functional history. They're arguing that there was a functional equivalent, right, to their agency. Well.
Now, we know that ICE was created by the Homeland Security Act in 2003.
To defend the United States and protect our citizens against the dangers of a new era.
So what exactly do they mean by this? I reached out to ICE directly, asking for their explanation of this functional history, but they never got back to me.
That narrative is kind of an effort to make the agency itself seem like it has this deep lineage that it simply does not.
Following breaking news in Minneapolis, where city officials confirm a shooting occurred reportedly involving a federal ICE agent.
It is the second shooting of an American citizen by federal officers in that city in just 3 weeks.
Did you just do? So I decided to do a bit of my own research. We're going to take a look at 3 distinct eras in American history, showing how immigration policy slowly transformed from labor management to law enforcement, culminating in the creation of ICE. So on the same page of their site, ICE refers to the remarkable development of the country throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, including the essential role of immigration and the evolving laws and regulations. Now, in terms of how the US treated immigration enforcement, the 19th and 20th centuries are actually really different from each other.
One of the remarkable things is that the Constitution is actually silent on immigration. So for the first century of the Republic, Congress plays virtually no role in regulating the arrival, admission, exclusion, or deportation of foreigners.
With one notable exception. the Alien and Sedition Acts, which authorized the president to deport non-citizens and allowed their arrest and imprisonment during wartime.
There is a panic in the United States over the potential radical ideas that certain immigrants are bringing to the United States, specifically after the French Revolution.
But real immigration restrictions wouldn't happen for almost another 100 years. And that's because until the Civil War resolved the issue of slavery in the US, regulating immigration at the federal level was incredibly difficult.
The problem throughout the antebellum period is if Congress had muscled in and said, we're going to control the arrival of the Irish poor into Boston or New York, exactly the same authority could have been used to regulate the arrival of free black people in South Carolina when you have slavery in the picture. It takes a civil war to resolve that conflict between the national and the local level.
So then in 1882, after the Civil War, Congress passed two foundational laws restricting immigration in the US. The Immigration Act allowed the exclusion of certain vulnerable minorities, such as people carrying contagious diseases.
The same year, in 1882, Congress passes another law, and that's the Chinese Exclusion Act. This law discriminates against Chinese people on grounds of race. It also discriminates on grounds of class because it's targeting not all Chinese people, but Chinese laborers in particular.
Now, since immigration isn't in the Constitution, this law was put to the courts. And the Supreme Court made a decision that would have ripple effects all the way to the modern day.
In effect, what the court rules is that power over national borders is so fundamental to the definition of any nation that it's extra-constitutional. It's a matter of national security and geopolitics.
This pivotal moment is when the US declares it has the right to turn immigrants away based solely on race or ethnicity.
So again, not based on constitutional law, not based on any agreed upon text. They were like, white supremacy is more important than the Constitution.
And in 1891, the first federal immigration agency was established to enforce these laws, the Office of the Superintendent of Immigration. And it had a staff of 4 people.
The immigrants of old turned their eyes toward America's gateway, Ellis Island.
It's really hard to overstate just how central Ellis Island was to immigration at this time. About 2 years after the formation of the first agency, the staff had grown to 180 people, and 119 of them were employed at Ellis Island. And that's because from 1892 to 1924, 20 million immigrants arrived in the US, and 12 million of them came through Ellis Island. And almost none of them were turned away.
In that 40-year period between the 1880s and the 1920s, we would estimate that somewhere between only 1% and 2% of all European immigrants coming to the United States were excluded on arrival. In an era without passports, without visas, without the administrative capacity to really enforce the law beyond a certain point.
There was no passports. I want you guys to understand this. At this point, passports basically did not exist. People could just move around to different countries as they wanted. Like, I think people don't understand. Like, so this, we're talking about your great-grandparents, your grandparents. They just came here. That's it. They did it the right way. They did it legally. This was the right way. This was legally. Show up.
The expectation, as long as you weren't Chinese, coming to the United States, is that you would get in.
And that was only 100 years ago.
And the greatest war the world had known exploded in Europe.
After
World War I was really when passports started, but the United States didn't enact passports until the 40s. I want to say it was like 41. Or was it 44? It's like super late. Super late.
The United States shifted from welcoming immigrants to restricting them. Many Americans feared a wave of displaced European refugees. And rising xenophobia intensified concerns that these immigrants would threaten national security. And
they called them DPs, chat. That was the slur back then. They called people DPs, or displaced persons, from a little thing called World War II. Red Edge Planet, thanks for the 10.
So-called American way.
You started? Oh my God! A fucking treasure train? I do an extra stream on a Saturday and I get a motherfucking treasure train? Twitch is like, Mike, you need to, they're rewarding me for 30 days in a row. Right now, chat, for a limited time, all subs of 5 gifts of 5 or more are now 30% off. Excuse me, 35% off. Harmonious Cacophony. and Green Bass Guy, and Red Edge Planet, and Scott Princess dropping a 20 bomb. Scott Princess, can you go ahead and drop a 50,000 bomb? Thank you. A 50,000 bomb. That would do well. Thank you. Thank you. Don Quixote Brando, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. Jackie, thank you for the 5. Open Presents, thank you for the 25. Fart Girl, thank you for the 10. That is a Fart Girl 1312 is that's quite a name. Super Ultra Cuddles, Sleeper Agent, Gwen Nefarious, Fart Girl 1312. Oh no, I do not want to see your DMs. AC100SC, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. Bobby Wowzow and Roscoe P. Coltrane, thank you for the 20, Bobby, and the 10 from Mr. Coltrane. Can we get some fucking knee bending? Snowflake Ninja, thank you for the 5. Free Palestine indeed, chat. Chaotic, thank you for the 10. Holy moly, I wish I could afford to get Rogue Game Maniac, thank you for the 10. Roundbrow, thank you for the 5. Rogue Maniac, thank you for the 5. I mean, sorry. Holy shit, a fucking treasure train? Chat, we are crazily close to 13,000 subs now because of the treasure train. We are now at the all-time height of my sub count. I've never had more subs than I have right now. 12,740 sub points. Holy, Board to Tears, Cruise Control, Anubu Olive. Holy moly. Chat, don't forget that during a hype train, you could also get bits or direct donations. Moxie Mainframe, Cruise Control, Reporting for Booty. Reporting for Booty, I do not want you messaging Fart Girl 1312. Okay, Reporting for Booty, leave Fart Girl 1312 alone. All right? There is no, I don't want to hear, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. They didn't do anything wrong, chat. I'm just making jokes. Okay? I'm just making jokes. Silent Radical, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. And Marcus. Mike, let love be love. LMAO. It's called a joke. Okay? It's called a joke. Board to Tears, thank you for the 10. At Manda with the 300 bits, but forget remembering with the 2,000 bits. I need to get myself some emotes. Adam Chase and C Mock, thank you both. And Soviet Cranberry, thanks for the 10. Jesus, we're at a level 16 hype trade, chat. That's a fucking crazy hype trade. That's a crazy hype trade. Okay, we're not doing 14,000. We're not doing 143,000 subs. Unless, Mike, it's the North Korean century. Oh yeah, I was gonna watch this video because it's actually insane. Mao Hangs Dong, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. North Korea is having a massive economic boom. Bleak Carthel, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. I don't know if you guys are hearing about this, but North Korea is exploding. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. We're learning about immigration. Anonymous Gifter, thank you so much.
Way of life.
For the 5.
These fears culminated in the Immigration Act of 1924.
Until 1924, American borders were normatively open, and after that they became normatively closed. You get large-scale numerical restriction.
And this is the start of the third distinct era of U.S. immigration. The Immigration Act of 1924 set strict limits on how many immigrants could enter the U.S. from each country.
U.S. immigration is restricted by law to a selective annual quota from each foreign country.
The quotas were based on the 1890 U.S. Census, and the goal was to preserve the proportions of each nationality from over 30 years prior, which largely restricted immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe. And immigrants were excluded from not only China, but all of Asia, as well as Africa. Upon signing the law, President Calvin Coolidge said, "America must be kept American."
So that to me is the turning point, because we totally take it for granted that there is a cap on immigration today. And just by accepting that, right, we are accepting the logic of the restrictionist.
So in 1933, immigration enforcement was merged with naturalization and became the Immigration and Naturalization Services, or the INS. They would remain the immigration agency until 2003. And then in 1940, President Franklin D. Roosevelt moved the INS from the Department of Labor to the Department of Justice. And that's a change that will come to redefine immigration in the U.S.
He does that pretty explicitly with the understanding that things are getting dicey in Europe.
The harvest days of 1939 brought a turn of world events whose effect on U.S. economy no man can yet predict.
The threat of World War II added to the growing notion of immigration as a national security issue. Immigration was no longer just about managing a workforce. FDR wrote in his reorganization plan, "I am convinced that under existing conditions, the immigration and naturalization activities can best contribute to the national well-being only if they are closely integrated with the activities of the Department of Justice." The INS was now tasked with fingerprinting every immigrant in the U.S. and organizing internment camps and detention centers for people they considered to be enemy aliens.
So that is people who do not have citizenship, people whose political backgrounds has put them on the United States' radar.
Goo Master, whoa! Meek Attack, Goo Master, Meek Attack with the 10. Comet Bot, Flex the Red, Calm Like a Tom with the 20. We chat Beetlejuice, thank you for the tier 3. Guys, we have achieved level 17 hype train. What the fuck? What the fuck? What can you even say at a level 17 hype train? The fuck? Carman Casey, thank you for the 10 tier 1. What the hell? Billy Denham. This dude used to take weekends off, but now I don't. We are at day 30. Day 30 in a row. Like, I'm somebody who provides value for your money, chat. Value for your money. We have been active the last 30 days. 30 days, active days, 30 out of 30. 30 out of 30. Where else do you get that kind of value? Mike, a dude in Bel Air started crying saying your subs are too high. I mean, if we hit 13,000, I mean, I think I have more members than he does. I'm pretty sure we have more. I have more members than H3H3. I don't know how many they have though. Is there a place to? I got 600,000 hours watched in the last 30 days, chat. Woo! Woo! That's a lot. 600,000 hours, 588,000 to be exact. One game streamed. Down arrow. Yeah, because the previous 30 days I had played Marvel Rivals. VO! Dropping the 20 bomb. Lisa Dread to Max, thank you for the 20. And Snap and Colo Picks, thank you for the 5. Genie, thank you for the 5. Ryan WS6 with the 30 bomb. Chat, it is happening. It is fucking happening. 12,940. I wish I could financially do more, like, for real. Bro, if you are having any kind of financial struggles, do not give money to me. Holy shit. Tacoma Blues, Can Painter, thank you for the 5. Gamda, thank you for the 10. Oh my lord, chat. It's happening. It's happening. Somebody message AB. Oh, with Vardis, Slimebee, and Vardis, terminally brandedized Don Sidbo has done it. You guys have done it. 13,000. 13,000. All right, chat. As a reward for your generosity, for supporting me, for doing a 30-day stream streak, I have decided to let you guys get a preview. A preview. When we reached 10,000 subs, I said I would allow VO to adopt a rescue kitten. Promises made, promises kept. Promises made, promises kept. The cat has not yet arrived. I didn't want to tease anybody before it happens. We are in the final stages of cat adoption. His name will be General Sherman. Shermy for short. Oh, the Shermanator. That's a good nickname. Thank you, chat. Oh my God. Our sub count has gone up even more as I tried to give you guys the little, we're busted through. We're at 91,000 or excuse me, 13,091. Why not second cat? They need a buddy, unlike dogs. There is a second cat. They have been together since they were kittens. So I believed it was wrong to separate them. So I am taking them both. Mike, are we getting an update on the project you're working on? Yes. The release of the new project will be in mid-March. The project has been proceeding. It has a lot of work completed. A second project is hitting the timeline. Does that mean we will get an update to the 200K bits reward? The thing about cats is that I believe a cat should not be compelled to do things. Now, General Sherman apparently likes to play fetch. So we will do that if he feels like it. House cats or what? Outdoor cats are wrong. You should not have an outdoor cat as a pet. Unless you have a farm and you're like, they're actively working as Mausers for livestock purposes, cats should be indoors. And even then, that is a little bit, you know, cats should not go outside. Why? Because they're an invasive species. They're an invasive species. And so if you have them outside, they're going to kill fucking native birds. It's very bad for the environment. All right. Well, thank you so much for the hype trade, chat. That was incredibly generous of you. Airbnb abortion. Thank you guys so much. Battlebox champion. Veridactyl. Ghost Dog 99. It's Mr. Murphy with the 20 bomb. Pay me to throw. Be radical. The anti-corporatist. Mishrox. Terminally Brandonized. And Don's Sidbo. I think we're all caught up. If I didn't thank you, let me take this time to thank you again. We got 541 subs and 3,950 bits. Mike, you need to test your cats when they arrive. Pratt in the West says, thanks, Scott Princess. Yes, thank you. If you got gifted a sub, I mean, who doesn't have a sub? If you don't have a sub right now and you're in the chat, you are unlucky. You've got, your luck is off because what the fuck? You got like 4 times as many subs as we do viewers right now. What the hell? Rip me. Throw it. I know. What the hell? What's going on, Twitch? Give the viewers a sub. What the fuck? All right, where were we? Oh, yeah, talking about immigration.
World War II, the INS detained almost 32,000 German, Italian, and Japanese non-US citizens, who were also denied lawyers. In total, the INS operated as many as 65 incarceration camps in this period. We want to take a second to thank our Vox.
You should start an hour later on weekends. Here's how I generally feel about streaming on the weekend. I should never have stopped. If I'm being honest with you, I'd wake up at 6:30 anyway. I would then just read politics shit. I'd spend 3 hours tweeting or something. You know, like what am I doing? I should just stream. I was listening away. It was gifted a sub. Thank you, whoever did that. There was 500 gifted subs, so it's a lot. FDR was a good neighbor policy, right? Yet he created concentration camps. Can you give me an overlook of why, since I don't know U.S. history? There was a very famous incident that took place during Pearl Harbor, where a Japanese aviator was shot down. And there were a few Japanese immigrants on the Hawaiian Islands who tried to aid the shot down aviator, which created a massive, massive panic. Imagine that some 9/11 terrorists, like one of them had been helped by a local immigrant, community, which had not been part of the plan. They just spontaneously decided to help the terror. Like, do you see what I mean? So I'm not justifying it. I'm saying that this incident was used to tar and feather all Japanese people as a national security threat. Also, the scale of the defeat of Pearl Harbor was kept confidential, but it was an extreme defeat. The United States Navy has never been struck such a decisive defeat as the Battle of Pearl Harbor. So there were serious concerns about the ability of the Navy to resist in the Pacific at that point. Again, not justifying it, not saying it's good. I'm telling you what happened and why that was done. It was racist. It was incorrect. What was the incident called? I think it was also, by the way, I just want to be correct. I'm pretty sure it was not true. I'm pretty sure it was like an exaggeration or not even true. Like, I think it was a false claim. Like, the Ni Hao incident. That's what it is. This is the one that I'm thinking of. The Ni Hao incident. On December 7th to December 13th, 1941, when the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service pilot Shingori Nishinakachi crash-landed on the Hawaiian island of Nihihau. I don't know how to pronounce it. I give up. After participating in the attack of Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Navy had mistakenly designated as an uninhabited island for damaged aircraft to land and await rescue. Native Hawaiians, unaware of the Pearl Harbor attack, treated him as a guest but took the precaution of removing his weapons. They brought a resident who had been born in Japan to interpret. That night, the Hawaiians learned of the attack and apprehended him. They allowed him to stay with Haradas, two of the only 3 residents of Japanese descent who posted guards. Nishikachi told the Haradas about the attack, and the 2 agreed to help him. They overcame a guard and escaped to destroy his plane and papers. They took the Nihawans, Beni Hakaka, Ben, and his wife prisoner. The Kenahelis overcame the guard and killed him. They literally killed him. One of Nishihaki's collaborators, Yoshoyo Adara, I'm so bad at names, it's embarrassing, committed suicide. Anyway, this was a very, let's just say, an incident that was very damaging and was used to contextualize and justify the internment. Pretty fucked up. The event was so widely known about in America that a December 1942 issue of Reader's Digest told an exaggerated tale of America's defense by full-blooded descendants of ancient Hawaiian warriors. They couldn't take ni hao, no how. And Kanahele was decorated for his actions in Honolulu, which is the guy who killed the pilot. So that is why the internment happened. And racism, obviously. Honestly, like, again, this incident doesn't justify internment. I want you to understand that this does not justify internment. It's insane that 2 people decided to commit a crime of treason, and then you say everybody who has the same ethnic or national background is now suspect because these 2 people did that. All right? That is an insane position, and it's a racist position. It's not a justification of internment. But you can understand how that incident was used to demonize everybody of Japanese descent. The scale of Georgia's new ICE seated aerial footage. By the way, I think it's good to know these. I think it's good to know history, all of history, because you get into a debate with an intelligent right winger, they would know about this, and you'll look dumb. In fact, I would bring it up. Honestly, I would pre-butt it by bringing it up. Most people don't even know about it at this point because they don't really study history at all in a serious way. They read a Wikipedia page. And honestly, I'm surprised when people have a Wikipedia level knowledge of anything. I'm usually impressed. I'm like, oh, wow, person actually read a Wikipedia page. That's like impressive. Mike, there's been a major development in the looks maxing power rankings. You guys really want to promote these guys, huh? They're getting advanced with the bait. The bait posting they're advancing with the bait posting. They're getting so good at the bait posting. God damn it. The lolcalification of like political content that's crazy.
This video and reporting is only possible because of their financial support. And thanks to them, we were able to make this video free behind stories. One region we haven't really discussed so far that's central to this era of change in American immigration.
Mike, did you see this?
It's important to note that the quota system implemented in the 20s never affected Latin America.
Agricultural businesses in the Southwest don't want any restriction on the labor supply. Latin America is exempted from these laws.
And that sentiment continued through to World War II, when there was a massive labor shortage in the U.S. The 1942 Bracero program allowed millions of Mexican men to enter the U.S. and work legally on short-term labor contracts.
Braceros. In Spanish, this means a man who works with his arms and hands.
The program, a partnership with the Mexican government, guaranteed fair wages for the workers, but many employers, especially in Texas, wanted even cheaper labor. So while millions of Mexicans entered the country through legal means in the 40s and 50s, hundreds of thousands of undocumented workers also crossed the border illegally and found work. And so it's in this time that the immigration debate in the U.S. really focuses on the southern border. And in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower implemented Operation Wetback, named after a pejorative slur for Mexican immigrants. The operation used military tactics to pursue its goals, led by INS head and U.S. Army Lieutenant General Joseph Swing.
The American Border Patrol struggles against a tense, explosive international problem. Along the sprawling California-Mexico border, thousands of Mexican wetbacks, or illegal entrants, are sneaking into the United States.
The result was one of the largest deportation efforts in U.S. history. The INS completed sweeps of factories and farms, shipping undocumented immigrants back to Mexico.
Also, they shipped American citizens too. It wasn't like they were delicate about this. It was the same shit.
Mexico in boats, buses, and the U.S. later claimed that 1.3 million people were deported.
So as we get into the 60s and 70s, the Immigration Service is in kind of a tricky spot.
At the height of the civil rights movement in the U.S., President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act. The consequential law prioritized family reunification and skills and repealed the longstanding policy of restricting immigration based on race and ethnicity. It was also around this time that Americans started focusing more on undocumented immigrants on the interior of the U.S.
The agency is also moving away from just policing the border. There is very much a sort of growing consensus and understanding that undocumented people are living in American communities throughout the U.S. The INS is really stretched thin. They are trying to do interior enforcement or internal operations, not just work that is near the border. The INS's budget in 1975 is $181 million. By the time the agency ends in 2003, the budget has eclipsed $6 billion.
And the INS grew this budget by doubling down on immigration as a national security and criminal justice issue.
This is an era where there is massive funding and bipartisan support for things like the war on crime, the war on drugs.
And so the INS began to explicitly rebrand.
They don't want to be known for naturalization. They don't want to be known for, working through a...
I'm sorry, chat. I'm so worried, dude. I'm so worried about this war in Iran. It seems like everybody is just stunned, including myself. Chad, have you ever been hit by a power jab that you didn't see coming? As much as boxing was obviously very damaging for my brain, I wonder if some of the experiences of being a boxer, now this was 24 years ago, really helped me, because it gives me kind of insights into a lot of aspects of myself. It gives me analogies to better understand the world. And I kind of feel like everybody should be punched in the face really hard. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everybody should take a nice punch to the face, a really hard punch to the face, at least once in their life, especially if they have centrist politics. And the reason why is because it's best explained by Thomas Hobbes in his famous political philosophic treatise, Leviathan, where he says, all men are vulnerable to every other man. Doesn't matter how strong you are, how charismatic you are, how intelligent you are. Everybody from time to time becomes vulnerable, whether they're taking a shit or going to sleep or what have you. So any person can be killed. And I think that lesson is a very important piece of humility that the punch to the face makes you very well aware of. I'll give you an example of something that can happen in a boxing match. If you get hit by an unguarded, say, a power jab, it causes your vision to like flash white. You kind of just go like, slight blue screen. And I feel like that moment, that bit of knowledge that you are just a biological computer that got shook a little bit too hard is worth gaining that experience for the humility that it brings. Now, for some people, they are immune to humility. And one of those people, his name is Jake Paul. Jake Paul was beat harder than almost anyone I've ever seen.
Is it coming off? What is happening here? It is.
Got a hairpiece.
Oh, wow. He's losing his hair.
Why would you go into a fight with a hairpiece? Are you crazy?
This before, but a fighter is getting the hair knocked off his head, Sergio.
Wow. That social media. I really do. I miss boxing, man. Like, boxing is so much better than MMA. It's not even funny. MMA sucks. MMA actually blows. Well, it is actually garbage. MMA is actually garbage. Boxing is so much better than MMA. It's not even funny. It's not even close. There's some reasons that boxing fell off. Part of it is because of Floyd Mayweather, maybe the worst boxer to ever watch in the history of the planet. He was very effective at winning the game. The best sports analogy for Floyd Mayweather is the trap at ice hockey or prevent defense in football. It's fucking like that was Floyd Mayweather. But MMA sucks. Boxing is awesome. This is my most firmly held take. No, dude, it's Whack-a-Shack. Yeah, it's like Whack-a-Shack. That's another perfect analogy. Betting horse racing and art was how the ultra-rich moved mudding. I mean, you mean the organized criminals that you call the ultra-rich?
Asylum hearings, what they want to
Both can be exciting. Both can be boring. The average MMA fight is boring. The average MMA fight is boring. The average boxing match is not. And the best, like a good MMA match usually involves some sort of clip. MMA is bad, and it's always been bad. I'm not afraid to say it. It was good in the very beginning when nobody knew, before the like grappling submission tech. There was a short period where striking, you know, like I know everybody's like, "Oh, Mike, you're wrong. Striking is so important at MMA now, and it's not just submissions and grappling." And it's like MMA markets itself as no holds barred, but it's not. So it's just like the type of fighting that it incentivizes sucks. Judo is awesome. Grappling is effective. I don't want to watch something that's effective. I want to watch something that's entertaining. Grappling is much safer for the participants than striking. If you can't enjoy watching a highly skilled grappler work, then you just don't understand what you're watching. I first of all, I can't appreciate it. I've been doing it since I was 2001. Sorry, 2002. I did it myself. I just don't find it entertaining. I don't find it entertaining. That's just a preference. I follow one of the original Red Rangers for the Power Rangers at TikTok who now does MMA, and he says most of the UFC rules have been structured to make jiu-jitsu the only real option. The 12-6 strike wasn't made for safety. It was made to make it impossible for strikers to combat effectively on the ground. I mean, if we're talking about like combat, if we're talking about like hand-to-hand combat, that is about doing the most damage as you can. It's about damaging ligaments. It's about damaging soft tissue. It's about damaging the eyes. It's about damaging the instep. It's about damaging the ears. It's about damaging, like, that's what actual combat is about. It's not like, oh, okay, this guy's sitting on top of me. It's, you know, come on. So again, I just don't find it. Again, me not liking MMA is my own take. That's my most controversial take. I know other guys don't agree with me because they like MMA. Okay. I think it's because they're really interested in the body on body contact that a lot of MMA is. It's sort of like the Greeks, the way the Greeks used to watch like wrestling in the nude with each other. I think it's kind of like more of what they were going for. It's very homoerotic. Yeah.
For is
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Law enforcement.
In a statement by the Attorney General under President Ronald Reagan in 1986, he refers to the INS as the criminal justice agency charged with the important responsibility for oversight and control.
People who can't grapple cope by saying it's gay. I value it. I think grappling is a very important skill, and I definitely do not want to get into a fight with someone who's very skilled in jiu-jitsu. There's no doubt about that. I am not arguing its effectiveness. I'm arguing its entertainment value. But as I said, in a real street fight, it's about tissue damage. You know, it's about me twisting your balls off. You know, it's about me gouging your eyes. It's about me fucking popping an eardrum. It's about me crushing an instep. It's about me, you know, damaging your knee ligaments. It's about me twisting a finger off. You know, it's about me. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's really about. Fish hook, chat. It's time for a fish hook. Pull their face apart. What percentage of chat do you think you can grapple? 1%. People don't really. I mean, first of all, it's really bad for you. I am not arguing that you should box. You should not. You should also not do MMA. It's unless it's very bad for you. It's extremely bad for your brain. I mean, I guess you should do it now. To be honest, you should be doing it now, but it's not because it's good for you. MMA has not been marketed as no holds barred since the mid 2000s. Your take is super outdated. Yes, I know. I actually know. Jiu-jitsu is that generally very safe and good self-defense? Yeah, I guess it's more safe than boxing or striking. In a very controlled environment, it's a good idea to be in shape and have a good sense of how to, you know, handle common situations you might get into. I'm not against it. Your tactic is channel the chimpanzee. It's not my tactic. It's the only tactic. Combat is about disabling the enemy. There's no honor in it. It's not a competition. It's combat. Combat is destroying your enemy while taking the least amount of risk for yourself. That's what it is. There's no honor in it. That's why the most powerful nation in the world has guys sitting in a fucking air-conditioned trailer in Nevada desert as he pilots a drone in Pakistan. That's the way it goes. There's no honor in that. But the trade guy could do the dirty moves and more. Oh, no, definitely true. I'm not saying dirty moves can't be done by the skilled. Those are the scariest people. I'm just saying that the competition of MMA doesn't approximate combat. And so if we're not doing combat, can we do something that's more entertaining, like boxing? All right, anyway, this is just I'm done with this take. It's just my preference. It's just my rage baiting the MMA fans. I understand that this take is incredibly bad, but it's my take. It's called I'm a Boomer Who Watched Mike Tyson in His Prime. And that was so much more exciting than any MMA match, in my opinion. Sorry, not sorry. I'm just a boxing boomer, exactly. I'm just a boxing boomer. U.S. troops received menus including steak, pie, crab, legs, and lobster tonight at various bases in the Middle East. Last night was wing night was Thursday. The thing that I'm concerned about, and I wonder, is if the Iranians decide that they need to give the United States a bloody nose. Now, I'm not saying that it's likely, but it is possible. What if a United States aircraft carrier is heavily damaged? I don't think they have option. I mean, I don't think that the Iranians are going to be able to conventionally resist the U.S. military very effectively. However, they can have telegenic attacks. They could have something strike and damage, especially because the aircraft carriers are being put into harm's way in vulnerable positions. The Pentagon is sending the largest force of American warships and aircraft to the Middle East in decades, including 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, as President Donald Trump warns of possible military action against Iran. Oh, damn it, dude.
I think the Iran issue has historically been a real unifying issue in the United States, which is odd given.
In today's podcaster Eurocentric media, it's better for Iran to do maximum damage to any foreign assets that doesn't get into the media because it would make that nation look like. I mean, honestly, I think that, you know, my interpretation of what's going on. How do I put this? If I was an Iranian, member of Iranian leadership, I would be advocating for maximum damage. I would be advocating for a retaliation that is maximum damage if they were attacked again. I would be saying the posture should be everything we've got, no reserve, sling it all. The longer you're not going to be able to maintain a reserve. The moment that there's any kind of aggression, sling everything. Don't hold anything back. And then prepare for a insurgency. Be setting up booby traps. Be setting up traps. Be setting up mines. Be setting up improvised explosive devices. Be setting up, cells to resist occupation. Like that would be the strategy that I would take. Activate proxies. Like that would be. God, typing is hard. There we go. What do you think are the chances that the Iranian government has collaborators like in Venezuela? It's 1,000%. Does Iran still have to worry about infiltration after Mossad blew their load last year? I can't imagine I don't know. I hesitate to underestimate Mossad. I hesitate to underestimate Mossad in the United States because they have infinite money. And so underestimating Mossad is a very dangerous thing to do. They've demonstrated some pretty impressive capabilities that you cannot deny are threatening. So if you're going to effectively resist Mossad, you can't come from the perspective of they're evil, therefore they're incompetent. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily true. Now, I don't think America could effectively conquer Yemen, but it could certainly. Iran is such a large country that we could do so much harm. The United States of America is one of those countries that has the capacity to do unlimited damage.
That the US political elites are pretty much split on absolutely everything. Iran tends to unify them, although I think Trump's desire, or at least build up and steps towards war, is beginning to kind of chip away at that unified elite. So I think there's that element of it. And then I think there's the element of the buildup, right? The buildup is the military buildup, the US military buildup in the region is really consequential. It's really significant. It's unlike anything that we've seen in the past before. Is it really intended to go to war, or is it intended to scare the Iranians to the negotiating table? I think there's an element of both, but the risk, of course, is that the buildup is so significant that unless Trump gets everything he wants out of an agreement with the Iranians, he's going to have to use it to justify that buildup.
Dina, I think, as you mentioned, the buildup of military capabilities in that part of the world's substantial. Do we know what the U.S. strategy is? What does the U.S. want here from Iran? That seems to be unclear for a lot of folks.
I mean, that is the million-dollar question. What are the objectives of what the United States is doing right now? It started out as, we had to find a way to contain or roll back Iran's nuclear program. Then for some people in the United States, it became about regime change. Then it returned back to the nuclear program. It's really, really unclear. And the reason for that is I think the administration itself is unclear on what its objectives are. I think there's an element of opportunism right now.
Okay, but
there's an opportunity.
Dina, how are the generals and the admirals, like the pros at this, like you, do they feel left from where you sit? Is this being run off the desk of the president in the Oval Office? Or is there actually a discussion of normal planning of a conflict or a war in the process of war studies?
I mean, I think it's impossible to go to war without at least having a conversation with the generals. And in fact, it's been reported that President Trump has been briefed on the military options when it comes to Iran. And part of that briefing and conversation is actually why Trump didn't go to war with Iran in January when the protests were happening and when he promised to send help. Because I think the briefing from the generals really frightened him and pushed him to build his capabilities up first.
That's the smartest thing I've heard, Paul. I mean, I'm sorry, but forget about all of our parents were riveted and molded by Pearl Harbor. November of 1979, there was a problem. The Exocet missile in the Falklands, there was a problem. Where's the problem here, given what we see in those maps, Paul?
I don't know. So, Dina, what is the role that Israel is playing in this situation? Other allies, perhaps other players in the Middle East? Is it just the U.S. and Iran with this stare-off here? What are the others doing?
I mean, I think the main players are definitely the U.S. and Iran, and the main decision maker on this front right now really is President Trump. But I think Israel is playing a huge role in trying to sway Trump, in trying to really convince him either to go to war or to have a very maximalist position in the nuclear negotiations. And bizarrely, compared to a few years ago when the first nuclear deal was being negotiated, it's the U.S.'s Gulf Arab partners that are actually urging restraint, that are saying, we don't want war because we don't know what will happen once the fighting starts.
Well, Dina, that's right where we wanted to go. I mean, did you study the American Civil War, Dina, at King's College? Or is it just
very little?
Very little. Okay. July 1861, first Battle of Bull Run. The socialites of Washington went out to watch the battle because it was going to be a short little skirmish. America after Iraq, America after Afghanistan is jaded about short little skirmishes. Do you assume if something happens this weekend, whatever the president decides, that this is some form of short little skirmish? Or do we end up with a bull run like the American?
And this is what AOC is saying. No war with Iran. Now, I want you to understand something, chat, that there is a tremendous bot support and right-wing support on Twitter to go after AOC. I think if you're a Twitter addict, your brain is being melted. Now, I am a Twitter addict, but I can step back and understand that Twitter has changed. Elon Musk is a Nazi, and he openly meddles with the algorithm. It has never been more botted. It's never been more artificial. It's never been less representative of the country than it is now. AOC says no war with Iran. That is a position that 80% of people support. AOC, speak with some of your Iranian constituents. Iran Network 2025. Bot. America first. If he does it, it rescues the Iranian people. He will be remembered as a hero. The history books will sing his praises for generations. You'll be viewed as an enemy of humanity, someone who is happy to abandon 90 million people to brutal oppression. No one believes this. Absolutely no one believes this. This is fucking insane. I want you to see what happens. This is the right wingers that are liking anti-AOC tweets. When you make an anti-AOC tweet, these are the people that are liking it and the bots that are liking it. Like, this is the shit that you need to recognize.
Civil War 4, 5, 6 years.
I think if you had asked me this question 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I would have said, I think there's a chance we can keep it short because the Iranians don't want to escalate further. They don't want to fight a war they know they're going to lose. I think today the issue is really existential for Iran. So
also, by the way, if you're an anti-AOC person, there she is saying no war with Iran. I thought she was a super imperialist. What's going on? What's going on? I thought she was the super duper imperialist who hates the left and is going to betray us and is supporting the empire. But yet she's one of the few Democrats saying no war with Iran. What's going on? Short circuit brain. Short circuit the brain. It's actually bad that AOC is saying no war with Iran.
Have no incentive to not escalate. Their incentive is the opposite. Escalate, throw everything we have at the problem and see what we can do, how to get the US bogged down further in the region, impact oil markets by shooting at oil and energy infrastructure in the region, potentially closing the Straits of Hormuz. And once that happens,
Open Presence, what is your Discord name?
It's absolutely impossible to keep this short.
So, Dina, I guess if we step back and say perhaps a strategy for the U.S.
More presence. Well, no, the reason why I ask, message VO. Message VO. You don't have to say it in chat. Because I think Casey Trott is interested in your idea about an alternative to live stream fail. Because honest to God, that subreddit is garbage.
U.S. would be regime change, because anything short of that seems inconsequential relative to the assets that are being deployed there.
Well, for sure. That could be an option. But then the problem is the assets that are deployed there are not enough. It's going to be virtually impossible to change the system from overhead. You're going to have to put boots on the ground. And I don't think any American president wants to put boots on the ground in Iran.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, again, what's the next step you're looking for, Dina?
I'm looking for the beginning of that conflict. I think, sadly, everybody has cornered themselves into that first airstrike happening. And then we'll be looking at how does Iran escalate? Does it go all out immediately, or does it do it step by step? I think my sense is that it will be a pretty rapid escalation. And then it becomes really difficult to say what will happen next.
What I've been hearing from sources is that Donald Trump has been running around for some time saying that he wants to be known as the American president that forever ended the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And he's even, I'm told by sources, been saying that he wants to complete this before the midterm elections. And so part of what we've seen is that, Trump, who ripped up the original nuclear agreement with Iran that was signed in 2015 under President Obama.
I mean, I think the lesson that is learned is that if you want independence from America, you need a nuke. So if I'm Mexico, I'm developing a nuclear weapon. If I'm Brazil, I'm developing a nuclear weapon. If I'm Japan, I'm developing a nuclear weapon. If I'm South Korea, I'm developing a nuclear weapon. If I'm Australia, I'm developing a nuclear weapon. I'm just telling the truth. If you don't have nukes, you are in danger of being invaded, attacked, have your assets stolen, your country seized. After the Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group transits the Atlantic, the U.S. will have 2 aircraft carriers and 15 destroyers to work with across combatant commands. That's approximately 33% of the deployed U.S. Navy fleet is represented below, which can carry 600 TLAMs. You might notice something, chat. The Gerald R. Ford doesn't have any F-35s on it because it has an electromagnetic catapult that cannot be used with the F-35C. You may notice that the F-35C is on the Abraham Lincoln because it uses a steam catapult. So they only have, F-18s on the Gerald R. Ford, even though it's a newer aircraft carrier.
Is that he has used the veneer of engaging in negotiations with Iran as cover.
Oh boy.
The U.S. military is prepared to strike Iran as early as this weekend, sources are telling CNN. But President Trump, who has privately argued for and against strikes, has yet to make a final decision on what to do. This comes amid a significant U.S. military buildup in the region, with another aircraft carrier strike group on the way, and Iran bracing for possible strikes as new satellite images show rapid fortification at several Iranian nuclear facilities, with concrete and large amounts of soil being used to to bury key sites. Out front now, Seth Jones, former advisor to the commanding general of U.S. Special Operations Forces in Afghanistan. So, Seth, the military's ready to go, clearly, or they're very close to being so. There are significant assets in the region with this other aircraft carrier strike group on the way. Do you think it is more likely than not that the U.S. will attack Iran?
Well, Brianna, the fact that we've got now 2 carrier strike groups that will be available in the region, those are costly deployments. And so I think without a breakthrough in diplomatic negotiations, which we have not seen, that I do think that we're seeing a higher risk of the U.S. conducting strikes. And of course, that then leads to this question about what's the U.S. objective here. I suspect that the U.S. objective is probably going to be limited to things like nuclear facilities, potentially Islamic.
I thought they destroyed them all with the first strikes. What happened? I thought they destroyed them all. What happened? I guess they didn't?
Revolutionary Guard Corps sites, rather than bigger objectives like regime change. That is a lot more risky. U.S. doesn't have ground forces there. It doesn't look like it's going to ever put any in. So I think that's sort of where we sit right now.
So when you talk about what that looks like compared to the strikes that the U.S. conducted on Iran's nuclear facilities this last summer, are you talking about sites in Tehran? Are you talking about sites well outside these nuclear facilities? What are you expecting?
So I think it's important to go back to the Prussian military theorist Karl von Clausewitz, who talks about war as being a continuation of politics or policy by other means. So I think really the goal, the question here is, what's the U.S. political objective with Iran right now? If it is largely about targeting Iran's nuclear sites, then I think we'll see something that's somewhat close to Operation Midnight Hammer. But the U.S. is probably also going to have to go after Iranian air defense capabilities, which the Israelis had already taken care of by the time those bombers conducted strikes. If the U.S. wants to go after Iran's missile capabilities or partner forces, or even start targeting some of the forces that are cracking down on protesters, then you're going to see a bigger target set list. And so, again, this all comes back to the administration's political objectives here.
You mentioned regime change and your expectation that is not the goal here. Is that a needle that is easily threaded? I mean, is there a way that the U.S. objective could, in a way, they could overachieve, for instance, what they may be trying to do? How do they make sure they don't do that?
Well, I think partly it's going to be the target set list that the administration starts going after. So if, again, they're just nuclear sites like the ones you just showed on the satellite imagery, those are pretty limited objectives. But if we see those like Tomahawks, for example, going after Islamic Revolutionary Guard sites or Basij sites or other key political targets, for example, decapitation strikes against Iranian political leaders.
I think one of the things that is kind of something that should be discussed is if assassination of political leaders is viable, why is an assassination attack on European or American leaders off the table? Like if J.D. Vance was assassinated by an Iranian special forces group, what justification would we have to object? Just as a hypothetical. I mean, it would just be like, well, we're strong, we're going to retaliate. But we couldn't say that it was like illegal or immoral, right? If Benjamin Netanyahu was assassinated, nobody could go, well, I can't believe you're doing assassinations. Like, that's the thing that's like, we discuss these decapitation strikes like they're not violations of America's own laws. We have laws against assassinations. Attacking people extrajudicially in their own sovereign territory is a crime and an act of war. And the only reason that American politicians have seemingly adopted this policy as being okay, and the American media is just going along with it.
That starts to move up the escalatory ladder and starts to look much more like weakening the regime and potentially regime change. But again, there are huge risks if the administration goes down that road.
Meanwhile, Iran state media reports that Iran and Russia will stage a joint naval drill in the region beginning tomorrow. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut, ranking member on the Intelligence Committee. Do you think an attack is imminent? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I think the president has now conducted a military attack on Caracas, which went flawlessly, and he's conducted a military attack on the tunnels, the nuclear infrastructure in Iran. That also went flawlessly. So right now the president believes that he can do this stuff without much risk, which is, by the way, a very dangerous frame of mind because there's a lot of risk involved. I think that both the United States and the Israelis are aware of the fact that the Iranians are doing carefully what they can to sort of restore what was damaged in the initial attacks. And so, yeah.
They are doing that. They're doing what they can to restore it.
Yeah. Look, they're clearing tunnels. They're restoring electricity. They're doing stuff in tunnels that we can't see. So, I mean, I think they're probably doing everything they can to try to rebuild what was destroyed a number of months ago. So when you say imminent, is it this week? I don't know. The president will be satisfied with something that is cinematic, that makes a big boom and destroys and breaks a lot of stuff. That's what happened in Caracas. He doesn't care so much about the longer questions of regime change, which are much more challenging.
So which raises the question, what would be the objective of a U.S. action against Iran? I mean, if it's not regime change.
Well, remember, this is President Trump, so his objective would be to do something which thrills people cinematically, right? I mean, this is what the president does, right? He appoints people to his cabinet who look good, who play the part. So, he will be very satisfied with a lot of explosions and a lot of broken stuff in Iran. That doesn't lead to regime change. And in fact, I have a lot of Iranian diaspora folks in my district, and they say, we really hope, especially since Donald Trump told the protesters that we would be there, that he is there. The question is, what does it mean to be there? Regime change can't happen just from the air. I mean, you might get lucky, right? You might break enough stuff that the regime collapses. The probability of that is pretty low, though. So when you start talking about regime change, you start looking at Iraq, you start looking at Afghanistan, where we actually had a lot of troops on the ground. And that's a place where the president has never gone.
I mean, he was telling protesters to take over government facilities to get the names of people who were attacking them, that help was on the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when that happened, it sort of broke my heart, right? Because if you're going to say that, and we did this in Iraq, right? When a U.S. president sort of said, rebel to the Shiites under Saddam Hussein, and they did, and they got brutally murdered, and we did not show up for them. And there's a long and ugly history of this. So, again, presumably the president, when he said that, he didn't appreciate the fact that they believed that we would be there in force, not just dropping bombs on battleships, because we can do that really easily without a lot of risk. Mm-hmm. But anyway, when the president said that, it really worried me because a lot of people could wind up dead.
In terms of an operation in the skies over Iran, I mean, the U.S. had pretty much, by the time the U.S. struck, they had freedom of movement in the skies over Iran. Is that still the situation?
No, it's not. As you might imagine, in a matter of months, the Iranians have worked pretty hard to rebuild their air defenses. So every day that goes by, and this is why your question about is an attack imminent, is, the clock is ticking, right? Every day that goes by, the Iranians improve their air defenses. And make a raid that much more dangerous. And again, the president has gotten lucky, right? He's done these military actions without significant casualties on the U.S. side. So, yeah, there's a clock ticking here. And even if Donald Trump doesn't appreciate all of this sort of, chessboard stuff, the Israelis sure do.
Yeah, Congressman Jim Hyams, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Chad. The stupidity, I want to show you the Fox coverage of it because it is, honest to God, disconcerting.
The president is extending his timeline for Iran to make a deal from 10 to 15 days. That still puts it in line with the 2-week time frame that Iran had given to address the gaps after the second round of indirect talks with the U.S. earlier this week.
What is the goal if there is a U.S. military strike?
Well, we're going to make a deal or we're going to get a deal one way or the other.
But with a military strike, is it to wipe out their nuclear program?
I'm not going to talk to you about that, but we're either going to get a deal or it's going to be unfortunate for them.
And you said today 10 days. Have you given them a deadline firm to make a deal?
I would think that would be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
The talks focus largely on Iran's nuclear program, but the U.S. also wants Iran to give up its long-range ballistic missiles. And Iranian officials maintain their ballistic missile program is not up for negotiation. The Wall Street Journal now reporting the president is weighing a limited strike to pressure Iran to make concessions. The outlet reports, per People Familiar, the opening assault, which, if authorized, could come within days, would target a few military or government sites. People familiar with the matter said. If If Iran still refused to comply with Trump's directive to end its nuclear enrichment, the U.S. would respond with a broad campaign against regime facilities, potentially aimed at toppling the Tehran regime. Russia is urging restraint. A spokesperson for the Kremlin says Russia continues to develop relations with Iran, and in doing so, we call on our Iranian friends and all parties in the region to exercise restraint and caution, and we urge them to prioritize political and diplomatic means in resolving any problems. Remember, though, back in June, the president gave a 2-week timeline for Iran to make a deal. Hours later, he gave the green light for Operation Midnight Hammer. Holly and Todd.
That is a very good reminder. Madeline Rivera live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in national security and military analyst Dr. Rebecca Grant. Dr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. So one thing the president is doing right now is being very transparent and laying out step by step what is going to happen. You know, we're going to use military action if you do not make a deal, and the timeline is about 10 days from now. That's what he's saying publicly.
Mike, I'm scared. Wait, what are you scared about? For my family in Iran, what is your assessment? What's the likelihood of a U.S. attack versus negotiation? Likelihood. That's like asking me to predict the likelihood that the dog is going to rub his ass on the carpet. Do you think there's any? Do you think there's rhyme or reason? This is because the Israelis' nature, Trump's nature, is to Bigfoot warmonger around the globe, and any deal the Iranians make is going to be ripped up. There is no diplomacy out of the Netanyahu puppet government. I keep going back and forth on this, in my mind, because it's like they're not going to achieve the goals that they set out, but just the act of bombing and then beating your chest and declaring victory. That's what right wingers want. They like the jets. They like the big missiles. Costs a lot of money, does mediums amount of damage. And they get to act like they won because they've avoided taking any consequences.
But, it feels like the Iranian regime is showing no signs of budging or even taking the president seriously. So where does that leave us? What happens next?
10 days, 15 days, we are in the countdown phase for potential strikes on Iran. Carly, we know these targets were briefed back in January. And let me be clear, this is not boots on the ground. This is most likely Iran getting its missile production sites bombed unless they agree to talk. They've said missiles are off the table, but no way will President Trump accept that. And you can see from the amount of forces we have over there, at least 7 destroyers for missile defense, an aircraft carrier, another on the way. Everything is in place for these strikes. It is time for Iran to make a deal and let those UN inspectors in as a start.
Let's focus on the timeline for a moment and pick up where Maddie left off. Do you expect a potential attack to possibly be sooner than this 10 to 15 day window in an effort to somewhat catch the Iranians by surprise and to not completely show our cards?
Well, that attack could come at any moment as far as the force posture is concerned, because, again, targets pre-briefed already. And remember, this is not a big new war. It's not a long campaign. President Trump uses military force for very specific objectives. And so I'm sure U.S. Central Command, U.S. Space Force, everybody else helping out is ready to execute now. And that's the pressure that's on Iran. Yeah, it could come at any moment.
Yeah, and Todd, that's a good point. I was thinking yesterday, what if it happens during the State of the Union address next week? Because, the American people want the president to focus on domestic policy, which of course he will be during that address. And this could be going on in the background. Wow. So only time will, of course, tell on that front. But Rebecca, I thought this was an interesting line from the Wall Street Journal reporting that Maddie read, just echoing it. If Iran still refuses to comply with Trump's directive to end its nuclear enrichment, the U.S. will respond with a broad campaign against regime facilities, potentially aimed at toppling the Tehran regime, because there has been a question about how the use of military action would lead to regime change when the Ayatollah lives in a bunker. He still has his loyalists in the IRGC. So touch on that for us and how regime change could actually happen with U.S. military involvement.
Well, it would take a lot of pressure on the right points, and it's possible that there are leadership and certainly IRGC targets on that list. But I got to say, President Trump has been very clear that objective one is to get that nuclear deal really lined up. So I think military targets are top priority. It would be so great to see that regime gone But no question, he's going to be working the missile, nuclear, maybe space launch targets at his top priority.
Staying in the region, President Trump announcing that the United States will be contributing $10 billion to the Board of Peace, but also giving a stark comparison. Listen.
The United States is going to make a contribution of $10 billion to the Board of Peace. When you look at that compared to the cost of war, that's 2 weeks of fighting. It's a very small number. It sounds like a lot, but it's a very small number.
Putting all of this together, Dr. Grant, does the regime change that Carly mentioned need to happen in Iran for Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, the Board of Peace plan for Gaza, to ultimately take shape?
Well, President Trump says that even Midnight Hammer helped that out. And I loved that Board of Peace meeting yesterday. This is the path forward for Gaza. Don't forget, a specific UN resolution has chartered that Board of Peace to go ahead. FIFA will build soccer fields. Countries are donating. It's a great pushback against China and Russia's diplomatic influence, too. So this is the way ahead for Gaza, and only President Trump could have thought this up and pulled it off. It's looking good.
Yeah, it certainly is a unique thing that you never see from presidents in the past, but it is happening internationally at this very moment. Dr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart.
I'm sorry for going quiet because I'm just their hearts aren't even into it. Their hearts aren't even in it. Dead-eyed. They're just dead-eyed. It's autopilot. Yeah, it is. This is the most amazing thing. The Board of Peace is so amazing. They're countering China and Russia's diplomatic influence by stealing a bunch of land and showing people that they're depraved, genocidal maniacs. You just literally, meanwhile, I just want to draw your attention to this. This story is legitimately funny for a variety of reasons, but I don't know how else to cover it. The economy of North Korea is absolutely exploding in growth.
Beach resort and a new subway station, a new beach resort, and a new downtown with so many skyscrapers, it's being called Pyongyang. North Korea is spending big despite international sanctions on the authoritarian country. Pyongyang has been the site of multiple redevelopment projects in recent years, changing portions of this once gritty landscape into a modern city. The latest sign of this building boom are these 80-story skyscrapers.
이 현재 제일 높은 살림집들로는 수도의 동쪽 관문에 자리 잡은 성화고리 80층 초고층 살림집과 북쪽 관문에 위치한 조니고리 80층 초고층 살림집을 둘 수 있습니다.
The flats are part of a plan laid out in 2021 by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to construct 50,000 new housing units in Pyongyang. The 5-year project promised to improve the living conditions of residents in Pyongyang.
지금 이 초고층 살림집들에서는 평범한 근로자들이 생활하고 있는데 앞으로 나날이 변모되는 조국의 모습과 더불어 우리 인민들은 새로 일도서는 고리들과 살림집들에서 보다 문명하고 행복한 생활을 누려가게 될 것입니다.
North Korean state media announced in late 2025 that the 5-year plan had reached its final stage, the construction of 10,000 new housing units in the city's Hwasong district. Below the streets is another sign of Pyongyang's redevelopment plans. The city's underground metro first opened in 1972 with trains imported from China. For decades, the metro stations had a distinctly Cold War-era vibe, including muted colors, wood-paneled train interiors, and station walls adorned with propaganda murals. Now, several stations have undergone a facelift. At Yonggwang Station, long escalators descend to a revamped platform. Brighter colors and modern electronic displays present riders with a more modern station.
오늘 변천된 평양의 모습은 새로 일도선 고리들뿐 아니라 우리 지하철도를 통해서도 체감할 수 있습니다. 지하철도 역사들은 수도 시민들의 교통상 편의를 보장하면서도 매 역들마다 주제별 특성에 맞게 건축과 장식, 조명을 비롯한 모든 것이 조형 예술화되었습니다.
Pyongyang's subway system consists of just 2 lines that stop at a total of 16 stations. The metro does not reach the city's newest suburbs, which are home to the newly built high-rises. More than
I definitely criticize North Korea's government. There's a lot about it that you could find fault with. But the idea that North Korea is some sort of grand threat to the United States, that we need to have like unbelievably harsh sanctions to starve the people, is just batshit crazy. Let them go. Let them live. It's fucking weird. Look at this. I mean, you can just see that it is just a country like many others. And there are plenty of American allies that are far more violent and oppressive than North Korea. There's no doubt about that.
100 kilometers north, a new beach resort hugs 5 kilometers of coastline in the city of Wonsan. The Wonsan Kalma Beach Resort was opened during the summer of 2025. State media reports said it can accommodate nearly 20,000 people, with more than 50 hotels and attractions like water parks and restaurants available for visitors. But while the beach resort was initially open to Russian tourists, it has since been closed to all foreign visitors. Tourism once brought in some $175 million in funds annually. But since the pandemic, few countries have been allowed to return, and most of those who were able to visit the reclusive country could only go to select locations on package tours. Chinese tourists once represented the largest contingent of foreign visitors, representing an estimated 90% of foreign visitors. But flights between the two countries remain limited. So, how is the country affording these construction projects? North Korea's economy is heavily constrained by international sanctions over its nuclear and weapons programs. To generate much-needed funds
to North Korea, they're not getting bombed.
Pyongyang has sold some $9.8 billion in weapons to Russia for the war in Ukraine. However, studies show the compensation received from Moscow is significantly less than the weapons' actual worth. The autocratic nation has also reportedly used illicit activities, including cybercrime, to generate funds in excess of $2 billion in 2025 alone, according to crypto.
They're stealing apes! They're stealing my apes!
To industry analysts.
Now, North Korea is under some of the tightest sanctions in the world. People oftentimes pretend as though China is like super friendly to North Korea. And in reality, it's not that. I mean, they're not really that friendly. I mean, they're kind of friendly compared to the rest of the world, but not in the level of support that people would think. Play it, Mike. I'm not playing this. Sometimes people will yell at me and Hassan for doing what they call throat clearing, and my dudes, my gals, my friends. Americans are some of the most propagandized and Europeans as well, are some of the most propagandized populations on the planet. It is necessary for us to plant seeds, to navigate these conversations, and to maintain our credibility by doing so. Truth is not enough of a defense. And if you study rhetoric and you study persuasion, you understand that being right does not matter. I can have all the logic and facts in the world, but if I do not have ethos, if I do not speak to your pathos, we're never getting the logos. Logic is a higher order brain function. I must get through lower order functions in order for your brain to function. I cannot proceed. I can't skip steps. So I as much as if you're already persuaded that North Korea and China are not as bad as American propaganda say, great, that's awesome. But don't try to trip me up with time wasting. Like, I do what I do because I'm in touch with the American people. Keep that in mind. Now, if you're not there, if you're in a better place than the American people, that's fucking awesome. I'm glad. The work is being done. Chad, North Korea doesn't require American approval to let their nuts hang. Exactly. North Korea has nukes. It has had nukes for a while. What has happened? The idea that an American adversary having nukes means that we need to go fucking invade Iran is batshit crazy.
For the first time tonight, we know the president is indeed weighing a limited U.S. military strike on Iran, a strike he said today he hopes might push the country to dismantle its nuclear program as talks continue in Geneva. And the president today also, for the first time, put a U.S. estimate on the number of protesters killed by the regime, pegging it at 32,000 people. Here's MTS Tayeb.
Tony, good evening. Well, as President Trump continues to surge major U.S. military assets into the region, Iran is insisting diplomacy is still alive and that it will submit a written proposal to Washington within the next 2 to 3 days. But the core disputes remain unresolved, namely Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missiles, and its regional proxies. Tehran has also issued a warning of its own. If attacked, it will retaliate. At U.S. bases in the region, which house tens of thousands of American troops, would be considered legitimate targets. Now, behind all this is also a hardening calculation in Tehran. Sources tell CBS News Iran's leadership believes the current U.S. terms will not guarantee real security or sanctions relief, and so talks are no longer being pursued at any cost. The picture tonight, a narrow diplomatic window remains open as the U.S. military continues to scale up and an Iranian leadership signaling it's prepared to respond.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump's continuing to threaten.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about how I want to do this coverage. You know, part of me wants to, talk to you guys about the American military, the mechanisms by which this shit is going to take place, give you a sense of the global logistical footprint of the American military, the empire, exactly how far it stretches, how it functionally is able to do shit, and how many hundreds of billions of dollars it is currently wasting.
To attack Iran as the U.S. expands its massive military presence in the Middle East. On Thursday, Trump said he would give Iran 10 to 15 days to reach a new nuclear deal.
They cannot continue to threaten the stability of the entire region, and they must make a deal. Or if that doesn't happen, I maybe can understand. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But bad things will happen if it doesn't.
The Pentagon has amassed an immense strike force of aircraft and warships and the largest military buildup in the region since the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Earlier this week, the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, passed through the Strait of Gibraltar on its way to join the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Persian Gulf. The USS Gerald Ford had been stationed in the Caribbean when the U.S. attacked Venezuela and abducted its president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. Trump's threats to attack Iran came during the inaugural meeting of the so-called Board of Peace, Trump's new initiative to create an alternative to the UN. On Tuesday, U.S. and Iranian negotiators held indirect talks in Geneva and left without a clear resolution. Iran has long maintained that its nuclear program is solely for civilian purposes. To talk about all of this and more, we're joined by Jeremy Scahill, co-founder of Dropsite News. His latest piece, "This is not a dress rehearsal. U.S. engaged in massive military buildup as threat to bomb Iran grows." Jeremy, lay out your findings.
Well, Amy, what I've been hearing from sources is that Donald Trump has been running around for some time saying that he wants to be known as the American president that forever ended the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And he's even, I'm told by sources, been saying that he wants to complete this before the midterm elections. And so part of what we've seen is that, Trump, who ripped up the original nuclear agreement with Iran that was signed in 2015 under President Obama, is that he has used the veneer of engaging in negotiations with Iran as cover to launch more strikes. That was the case last June when the United States and Israel waged a 12-day massive bombing campaign that killed more than 1,000 Iranians. Now we're in the process of Trump saying, I was told a couple of days ago that Trump had made clear to the Iranians that they had 2 weeks to come back with what amounted to a pretty sweeping capitulation to his demands. The Iranian foreign minister this morning said that the U.S. has not formally demanded zero enrichment. But what I understand is that the Iranians have been told that the issue of their ballistic missile supply and reducing it dramatically has to be on the table, and also their support for regional resistance movements. Remember, Iran is the only actual nation state, with the exception of Ansar Allah, the Houthis in Yemen, that has launched any sort of attacks against Israel in response to the genocide in Gaza. The Israelis have been empowered by both President Biden when he was in office and Donald Trump to wage these sweeping wars across the Middle East. And so what we're looking at right now is the Trump strategy is either we force them into capitulation and we make a deal or that is entirely on Trump's terms, and if they make that kind of a deal, that would eliminate large capacity of the ballistic missile system. The Iranians basically don't have any deterrence anymore. And so I'm told that part of Trump's calculation is, look, if we get them to do that, they don't really have a state anymore, and their days are numbered, because it would make them much more susceptible to Israeli attack, not to mention American attack. But if the Iranians, say that their red lines are essentially their self-defense, which is their ballistic missile and drone program, then the United States is poised to attack. There's two potential scenarios here. One could be that we see some form of initial limited scale attack that the United States may think would, quote unquote, soften the Iranians. And if they don't come back with capitulation, then you wage a much wider war. I'm told by sources who are in direct contact with military planners and others that in the bigger picture, the U.S. is looking at two possible scenarios. One would be the Libya scenario, where you have U.S. air power that is used to enact regime change, and then you allow chaos and civil war to brew on the ground. Or you have something that they're comparing to a Venezuela scenario. It doesn't mean that they would try to kidnap Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, or senior Iranian officials. It means that they would try to decapitate the leadership and then make some sort of a deal with lower echelons within the Iranian state, akin to what's happening now in Venezuela, where you have American oil companies coming in and the Venezuelan authorities doing essentially whatever Marco Rubio and Donald Trump order them to do. At the same time, I've been told by military experts who spent decades working in the Pentagon that there's a spirit of delusion that has just taken hold in the administration, that a lot of the decisions being made now are not tactical decisions. They have to do with politics and Donald Trump's ego and wanting to be known as the man who forever smashed the Islamic Revolution. So there's no doubt about it. The U.S. is on the verge of some form of military action. It remains possible that the Iranians are going to try to thread the needle. The foreign minister and others say that they're working on a draft to come back to what the U.S. demanded in Geneva and in Oman before that. But it's a very dire situation. And if the U.S. does launch a larger scale attack, I'm told that probably what they would try to do is a blitzkrieg to knock out as much of Iran's offensive military capability as possible alongside its air defenses, hit command and control centers, try to blow up naval assets. And then the question becomes, what kind of response can the Iranians offer? In the past, they've calibrated their strikes. They've intentionally not tried to kill large numbers of American troops. They showed a capacity to defeat Iron Dome in Israel. Their hypersonic missiles certainly are advanced, and they're very strong. They do have an ability at this moment to do significant damage to Israel if they want to, and also to attack oil infrastructure, potentially close the Strait of Hormuz. But all of that sort of assumes that the Iranian missile capability is not severely damaged in an opening massive U.S. strike. And that's a very big wild card here. The Iranians said they're not going to calibrate anymore. They're not going to do backdoor choreography if the U.S. attacks. They view it as an existential war for the Islamic Revolution and the existence of the independence of Iran's state.
Jeremy, you talked about political reasons that could be why President Trump is ramping up against Iran right now. I mean, could that have to do, interestingly enough, with Epstein? You have the former prince who's been arrested. Trump cannot, no matter how hard he tries, get this off the front pages of the newspapers in the United States, even though co-conspirators and he himself are not being gone after by the Justice Department, according to the Attorney General. But Britain is doing it, that no matter what he does, this is extremely threatening. And so what we saw over the New Year's is President Trump moving that USS Gerald Ford, the largest aircraft carrier, next to Venezuela. This was when the headlines were dominated.
Does Trump's inexplicable vendetta against an Eastern empire make him America's Crassus? No, because Crassus was at least a gifted entrepreneur who knew how to work the system. You know what I mean? Like, Crassus was at least, like, legitimately somebody who made money. Whereas Donald Trump was a fail-son piece of shit who was a total scam artist up until the point he got money by being president.
In December by Epstein, and he attacks and abducts the Venezuelan president. Now he brings this same aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, to join the USS Abraham Lincoln. I mean, the cost of maintaining this armada near Iran, are you scared that this is what is driving him?
Well, also on that issue of the Gerald Ford, I mean, this is a crew that has been in a heavy rotation. Normally, there would need to be maintenance on that aircraft carrier. There would need to be troop rotation. And to send them to the region is a very clear indication that the U.S. has on the table a very serious intent to strike Iran. When I saw that the Gerald Ford was getting moved from the Western Hemisphere to the Eastern Hemisphere and looked at some of the troop rotation and maintenance issues, that's a very ominous sign. But to your broader point about Epstein, you know, the Iranians have started referring to themselves as being at war with the, you know, Epstein regime, you know, the kind of coalition of nations that are amassing alongside Trump right now in their posture in the world, and with Donald Trump himself being one of the main suspects in this entire thing. Certainly the wag the dog scenario is an element here. You know, Donald Trump is at great exposure because of the Epstein files, no matter how many lies he wants to tell or, you know, how often he tries to distract from it. That certainly is a factor here, but I wouldn't underestimate the degree to which you have elements of this administration right now. It's very different in several core ways from Trump 1. You have elements here who are absolutely obsessed with Iran and destroying the Islamic Revolution. That is not something to be understated. And Trump, I'm told, is walking around constantly bringing up that he wants to forever be the president that changed these regimes in the world. I mean, you can talk about Cuba in a different program, but that's the vibe right now. It's like the resurrection of the Dulles in the early stages of the CIA worldview that the United States is just going to be toppling regimes around the world. So, you know, while I think the Epstein part of it is a convenient element for what Trump is doing, I think they're dead set on trying to change the Iranian regime or force them into a capitulation that would forever weaken the existence of Iran as an independent state.
Trump knows how high of an orgasmic pleasure his voter base takes pleasure from seeing brown people bombed. It's like a reset bomb. Erdogan does the same every year and it works every fucking time. Yeah, I would say that Donald Trump is trying to develop an Erdogan. No, Erdogan is not quite right. He's a combination of America's Erdogan with America's like Orban. Yes. I would say Stephen Miller is studying Orban, and Trump's temperamentally like Erdogan. So it's like a combination. It's a combination of the two.
Didn't President Obama work a nuclear deal with Iran that President Trump pulled out of?
Yeah, you know, Amy, what's incredible too is that Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, War Secretary Hegseth, all said after the June strikes that they had completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Let's remember, though, that beginning in late 2003, according to even current U.S. intelligence assessments, Iran had ended its nuclear weapons program. There was a fatwa issued by the supreme leader decades ago that said that it was forbidden to use or possess weapons of mass destruction. Now, you can say, oh, that's just propaganda, that's just lies. But the reality is, if you talk to Iranians, I recently met with a former senior Iranian diplomat who helped to negotiate that 2015 deal. And he said that, you know, what the U.S. is doing right now is actually helping the camp within Iran that says it was a grave mistake that we ended that program. So there's that.
That's right, because it was a grave mistake. If they had a nuke, they would be in a much better position, period. The fact that they don't have a nuke makes them so much weaker.
element to it. But I think what we're looking at right now is that you have this kind of neocon ideology that, despite all of Trump's rhetoric about hating the neocons and saying the Iraq war was a catastrophic mistake, Trump seems dead set on sort of legacy work here and regime change in Iran. And the question here, Amy, is if the United States does attack, and if it's true what the Iranians are saying, that they're not going to calibrate strikes anymore. You know, I was told by one well-connected Iranian that he's heard talk of wanting to kill at least 500 American service members in retaliatory strikes. Donald Trump has never had to endure a mass casualty incident as president of American soldiers or American personnel. And the question then becomes, what does Trump do if the Iranians are able to successfully strike military bases or other areas where there are large numbers of Americans? There's tens of thousands of Americans positioned in the Gulf right now. This is a very, very dangerous scenario that we're facing right now.
I want to go back for a moment before we end to the board, the so-called Board of Peace. President Trump speaking at it in Washington, D.C. on Thursday.
The war in Gaza is over. It's over. There are little flames, little flames. Hamas has been, I think they're going to give up their weapons, which is what they promised. If they don't, it'll be, you know, they'll be harshly met, very harshly met. They don't want that.
So this was the inaugural meeting of the so-called Board of Peace, Trump's new initiative to create an alternative to the United Nations. By the way, the Pope has refused to join it, talking about it as a threat to the United Nations. Trump vowed to provide $10 billion in U.S. funds to the board, even though Congress has not approved any such spending and has named himself the group's chair for life. Among Trump's board key proposals is to turn Gaza into an upscale seaside resort with gleaming skyscrapers and entirely new cities. Your final comment on this?
Well, let's skip forward from all of the ridiculous pageantry of this scene at the Board of Peace and talk about what's really happening here. Palestinians are being told that they must completely surrender, not just Kalashnikovs and other weapons that they would use to defend themselves against Israeli occupation, but the very cause of Palestinian liberation or self-determination. And what Palestinians in Gaza,
I mean, no, the idea that an occupied people would give up even like small arms is a psychotic demand. And it's really a genocidal demand. You can't destroy another country with a couple AK-47s. It's not possible. And it is a sign of genocidal intent.
Are being faced with is you either fully bend the knee and accept a colonial apartheid regime as your overseer, that you accept a new reality as dystopian plantation workers on Jared Kushner's, real estate project, or we're going to kill you. That is what's being said here. And so the U.S. has plans to build a huge military base there for their international occupation force. The Israelis are in control of nearly 60% of Gaza in the east of the Strip. They don't seem to have any intent of leaving. You have a re-education program that Israel's foreign minister spoke of at this so-called Board of Peace meeting yesterday, and said that it begins with disarmament and demilitarization and then de-radicalization. So if you're a Palestinian family, what they're saying to you is your children need to be raised to accept that Zionism is going to dominate their lives now, the colonial apartheid regime is going to dominate your lives now, and if you dare think otherwise, we erase you from the earth. They still very well may try to mass remove Palestinians. But it does seem that the plan right now is to turn them into the plantation workers for Jared Kushner's real estate plans moving forward, while you have Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority rewriting the Palestinian Constitution alongside France and other Western powers to try to ban any Palestinians that don't accept the Oslo Accords, don't accept Israeli colonialism, from ever running for office. So what they want to do is put in this Palestinian Technocratic Committee in Gaza and force them to essentially be like Mahmoud Abbas, where you're the mayors of a large prison camp run by the United States and Israel, and the residents of this prison camp are just keeping the land until Israeli settlers can come in and take it over. That's what this Board of Peace is entirely about.
And Israel's just joined the Board of Peace. Jeremy Scahill, I want to thank you for being with us, co-founder of Dropsite News. We'll link to your new piece. This is not a dress rehearsal. U.S. engaged in massive military buildup as threat to bomb Iran grows.
All I know, chat, is if they fucking get us into an actual war with Iran, it's one of those actions which is so stupid, it's so evil, that I think it actually might get Americans off their ass again. Like, our generation is not naive. This isn't 2001. It's very clearly a war of aggression being forced on us by Israel and Israel's influence. People are already fed up with Israel. They hate it. It's a bipartisan commitment. If we got into a war with Iran and it started costing lives, there's no fucking way that's going to be permitted. What are the chances this ends like Venezuela? A lot less. I think Iran is a much more effective resistor of American hegemony. All right, chat. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. It was a low energy day, but you guys were high energy. So thank you for all the amazing support. I'm going to send you guys, gals, non-binary pals over to the Queen Casey Tron, who deserves all of our support. So thank you so much. Hang out. I'll see you guys soon. Love you. I'll be back tomorrow. We are on our hot streak, okay? Until I see a reason not to stop streaming, I'm going to keep going. Am I right, chat? 500 subs. Can't argue with that. Signed up for DSA today. Thanks, Mike, for what you do. Let's fucking go. All right, everybody. Stay safe. Solidarity forever, my friends. I'll see you all very soon. Peace out.